I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the Town of Manlius Planning Board. We have an extremely full agenda tonight, so bear with us and we'll try to move through as efficiently as possible. So the first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from May 13th, 2024, and I'll take the motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of May 13th, 2024.
Okay, motion made by Judy.
I prefer it, so.
I'll second it. Second by Eric. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Minutes from May 13th are approved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a zone change recommendation to the town board from CB to R3 for Eric and Natalie Donnelly at 7155 Taylor Road, East Syracuse, New York 13057, tax map number 073.02-14.2. Do we have anybody here on behalf of the applicant? Okay. So we do have.
We do have them online.
Oh, they are online. Okay. Yep.
Matthew, you just have to unmute.
Matthew, can you hear us?
Oh, we just tested it.
Oh, there we
Raise
go.
it
Matthew.
again. No, it's not. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. If you want to tell us quickly what you would like to do with your parcel and why the zone change recommendation.
Yes. So my name is Matthew Donnelly, and I'm the executor of the estate. My brother who owned that property, and we would like to change it back to residential that it had been for many years, with the idea of currently my son and daughter-in-law are thinking of putting a 3-bedroom home on that property. It's surrounded by residential property. Like I said, this property's been in our family since 1927 and always been residential, but somewhere along the line it got changed to commercial. And not wanting to put up a 7-Eleven, we'd like to request a change back to residential so that we can put up a single-family home.
Okay.
Can I
Go ahead, Rich.
just want to ask a quick question? Is that on sewer or septic?
The houses on that area, there's about, I think, 6 of them that are on sewer, and that one is on, I'm sorry, on septic, and that one is on septic.
I couldn't hear you. Is that septic or sewer?
Septic.
Which is not permitted in R3, so.
So again, what is it you want to do there? Build a single family home?
3-bedroom home, yes.
Can you pull up the zoning map? Yes.
I'm a little confused.
Mhm.
We're looking at doing a recommendation
Right.
to the town board.
Yeah.
R3 does not allow septic.
Correct.
Why are we going any further?
Because maybe we will recommend something else.
Something that will allow
And I think we
Same
need,
kind of home, but
See,
we looked
I
at
guess I
it.
take a different view of this, that the applicant has proposed something. Our idea should be yes or no, not to tell the applicant what he should do, could do,
not the
can
applicant,
do. Or,
the town board. We're gonna tell, we're gonna recommend to the town board. So we would, if, right now, that's not an option. An R3 for what this gentleman wants to do is not an option.
right,
Because septic systems are not allowed in the R3 zone.
I agree.
If it were already R3 and it was grandfathered, that would be different. That's not the case. So we're looking to do a change. So that, to look at what is happening in that area, I think is an important exercise. So, okay, so there's. So the green is
R3.
R3.
R3, okay.
And the yellow is
It's
the
one either
CB
side.
parcel.
Yes, the two on either side are RA,
Mhm.
and then he's.
CB.
Okay, so I would suggest that CB is not suitable.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is an opportunity because he's coming in looking to change it. And R3 is not available
Mhm.
because it's not allowed. So that's why the discussion could be, would we recommend something else? So,
Is there a septic there already? What's the trailer using?
Yes,
So, but it needs to be sewer for R3.
Right,
well, because it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, as long as it stays what it is and doesn't change. As soon as you change it, then you have to
Right.
comply. And the code is not, you can't go to ZBA for a variance on a septic system. It's just straight up not allowed.
Okay.
So is,
And septic is allowed in RA, which are the other parcels surrounding it.
correct.
why
But
didn't they
the
go for
parcel's
RA?
Yeah.
So let's see.
Am I missing something?
But the parcel's not RA right now.
It is not, yeah, it's not large enough for RA.
Okay,
Oh,
so, yeah, I'm looking to see what it says about RA.
And my understanding was ours gave them more flexibility, but without the sewers, it's not allowed.
What's the frontage on there? So
120 or 30.
150, a minimum of 40,000 square feet.
so can I interject in there?
sure, go ahead.
So when we first started looking at this, we were surprised to find out it was commercial, number one. So then we asked what we need to do to be able to put a home on it. And it was discussed that we couldn't do restricted agriculture, which we own the property next door at 7161, and that's what that is. But they said it's not wide enough for that, which really didn't matter to us. We just want to be able to put a home on it. And then the suggestion from whoever we were talking to at the time was R3. So I guess I'm not married to R3. I just want to be able to put up a home on it.
Which property do you own next door?
So I own the farmhouse right there. Yep,
Yeah, it's this one to the right.
This one.
correct.
But then you can't have another structure.
And you can't take something and make it a non-conforming use in another.
No,
Right. Right.
and
Why can't they put the house on it as it is as North Country?
It's not, residential's not allowed in the CA.
CB,
CB.
How did you get this way in the first place from the trailer?
That's a really good question.
he said something about a 7-Eleven, they wanted to put a 7-Eleven.
Well, that was a kind of just a little joke. All the homes on that whole street, as you may know, are single-family homes. Then, of course, you have Fremont Hills above it is all single family.
Maybe you'll get a 7-Eleven or something.
So did you own it before it was commercial?
Throughout the family, I've owned it at some time. My son, who currently wants to put a home up, owned it a few years back. Before that, my in-laws owned it. We've always owned it since
So do you know the
1927.
history of how it became commercial from residential? And
I
what?
do not, and nobody,
Okay.
If you look, that long parcel behind there looks like it corresponds to the old 690 bypass right away.
correct.
Right, so it may predate going back that far that people thought that 690 corridor would be commercial. I don't know.
So,
What would you have to do to get
I think right,
sewer, or is that totally impossible?
Is this a zoning problem to solve, not ours?
no, well, let me put it this way, this would be my advice in this one. I think that the, town board is looking for a recommendation, and the recommendation, I think, from this board, upon reading the code is, we cannot recommend, and do not recommend that the zone change, because it would not be able to meet the setback for what he's looking for, right? To meet the criterion.
Yeah.
And the town has no ability to give any relief from that. So then, an understanding that this is, maybe the recommendation goes on to say is that, this board understands that this is an unusual site, it should not be zoned when it's zoned, and it may be a combination of changing it to a different zone and variances.
Which is.
So it's a whole thing.
But as you say, you can't give a variance for septic.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. No, totally agree with you. So I'm just saying that part one of this recommendation is we don't recommend it and we can't recommend it, and the town board can't. If he wants to build a house, I mean, they could change the zone, but if they change the zone, he still can't follow the code, and there's no variance available to him for septic. So, but I think what this board as a planning board needs to do is look at planning issues, right? It makes no sense for that to be, zoned the way it is.
And so and they don't have enough, square footage for R1.
Do they, the houses or the lots that are across the street and all of that, do they have sewer?
There are three.
Yeah, so, I mean, the answer to solve the problem is they would need to spend the money, I think, they would need to spend the money to tie into sewer.
Yeah.
To be able to get R3 for that lot.
Where is the sewer done? Is that even a feasible situation?
It's gotta be across the
Because it's
street.
across the street.
Yeah.
So, right now,
Because the maps don't show a sewer line in close proximity, it's 2 or 3 houses away.
right, so if I can interject, the, going towards Burdick Street, I think it's about, I'm just guessing, but 4 or 5 houses past there, the sewer line ends on Taylor Road. So all the houses in gray there, if I'm saying the right color, are all septic.
You can see where it
Right there,
changes in the
yep,
lots.
right about there, yep, right there.
Yeah.
And then they end right here, sewer's end right here. Right intersection of the road,
It's unfortunate, and the recognition include, that we do see that it should be.
Something
But
other,
Than CB.
that it should be something other than.
To have
CB.
continuity with a larger plan of development there, and that we don't have a solution. But we do agree with the applicant that in the scale of everything else around it, they should be able to put a house there. However, if they don't have the proper utilities available, there's nothing we can do about it.
well, that's something to explore in a separate, not this board, it's not for this board. to
Yeah.
do.
Right, that's what I'm
Can't
saying,
make
is
this
we can't.
Right, the planning board, the planning office can work with them and say, hey, here's an idea, maybe you go to zoning board, maybe you do this, right? But I think the recommendation, I guess the first question is, do you agree that it should not be CD?
Yeah, I don't know about everybody else, I agree, it shouldn't, it's not appropriate for CB, but that it would be more appropriate for residential, but within the code.
I don't think they could build anything in CD without sewer.
I mean,
Right.
either way, it's a strange,
Yeah,
non-conforming law, so.
They're gonna have to talk to Tom and sort it out with the plan.
Yeah, that's, I
I
agree.
don't think we can do anything else.
I think our recommendation is you can't turn it into R3
mm-hmm,
and you need to explore other alternatives.
We agree that it shouldn't be what it is, but we can't say what it should be.
Did you have some, did you wanna propose a resolution? I think you said it.
I guess
Fair
so,
enough.
yeah, so, we agree with the applicant's, opinion that it shouldn't be commercial. But given the restrictions on the adjacent zones, we can't recommend that it could be put into one of those for the use that they're proposing. And that they should pursue the matter with the planning office.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And can we just add in so that the town
Don
board
looks like he
understands
wants to say something.
that our R3 must have sewer for a single family, and that's another reason for our recommendation.
yeah.
Negative recommendation on this zone change.
Don, did you wanna say something?
One of the cases, I drive by the site and just say, if anything could happen to the site, put a house on it, the trailer is clearly old, the site's underutilized in a way. I don't have a solution for this in hand tonight. But I see only upsides to being able to get a house on it. How it gets there, given the requirement that for appropriate sewer service, I don't have an answer right now.
In this zone, in the R3 zone.
I mean, you change it to R3, but they still can't do anything. Size doesn't seem to fit any of our other categories. Is there, but I'm not experienced enough to know where you might go through the town board or the zoning board of appeals and get a variance to achieve something. I do not know if you can do more inventive kinds of septic systems where there's a storage and retrieval system. I don't know if we're capable of thinking that way, or we don't care to, or if the system doesn't permit it.
Our code doesn't recognize that. It's
So
simple.
I think where they want to get is a good thing for the town, but I don't know if they have to get
And we don't need to figure that out today. So I think what Aaron, I want to understand.
One question for Doug. Is it ever done where they have a tank that gets pumped versus the leach field? 'Cause isn't it the leach field that's really the problem?
Well, if you look at the location along Taylor Road, I would say that lot is generally consistent with the size of the other lots, even where there aren't sewers. I think if you were to look at this, they could probably come up with some type of a system on there, whether it's a raised bed or whatnot. And I think the health department would work on it. And to Don's point, it makes sense, it makes good planning sense that becomes a residential property in there, consistent with the other homes on Taylor Road. That's just my opinion.
I think there's a way to get there, that it's just not for this board to say, we'll talk to Tom about it. And Chris and Doug, and that's a whole different thing, but for these purposes, I think the motion.
Yeah.
Did you finish your motion?
Yes,
Okay.
It was motion made by Aaron, second by Rich. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and we are not able to make a positive recommendation from CB to R3, but we would refer you to the planning office to hopefully come up with a viable solution. We believe that it should be residential in some nature, as long as it conforms with our code.
Okay, so I just contact planning, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Probably just, yeah, or Lisa Beaman, yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Our next item is another zone change, recommendation to the town board. Look for R to RM, for Shawshank Bot, 4579, the 7 Pines, 8104 Route 92, Manlius, New York, 13104, tax map number 112.02-2.7. And this is for building 3/4 on the lot. Do we have someone here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes,
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Benz. I'm with Redev CNY on behalf of the applicant, Dr. Bont, and Hogan Doctors LLC as the official applicant. This project has been before this board about a year ago, and then we went from here to the town board. We did receive the approval from the town board for the first phase of this project last June 23rd of last year. After we went through the process, and as a brief summary of kind of how we got here to date, the application last year was for the redevelopment of the full site. We were going to change all 4 buildings to residential at the time. Through the compromise, and just to make sure that we weren't changing too quickly, the application was adjusted so that only buildings 2 and 3 were going to be adjusted to that mixed use. So it's commercial on the first floor, residential on the second floor of those 2 buildings. Unfortunately, that particular deal just never penciled out. We went to our lender, Pathfinder Bank, is financing the construction, and the numbers just wouldn't make sense. The original plan called for 6 residential units, so it's 3 residential units on the second floor of each of those 2 buildings. And so when we went back, we said, well, the demand for housing supersedes the current commercial need in this area. It's within a suburban area, obviously a suburban park right next door to this location. So we thought that residential continues to make the appropriate use for this building, for this property. And so tonight we're coming here to request relief to change the zoning on, we call it building 3/4, to really do the same thing as we do with the other 2 buildings. So it's mixed use, where there'll be a commercial component on that first floor, and then we're adding 7 additional units, making a total of 13 residential units on the site. We believe this relief to be consistent from a zoning perspective with the area uses. This particular use with residential is less stress and less demand on the property in general, requires lower parking thresholds. We had previously worked with one neighbor in particular who's here tonight, and agreed to put up a fence to separate the properties as well to make sure that there's not light pollution and some of those things. And as part of that too, we're also proposing to increase the trees and some of the foliage, increase any kind of visibility barrier between the 2 properties as well. So for tonight, as the application summarizes, we're looking for zoning change from restricted agriculture to the RN resi multiple use.
Jane, if I could ask a question, because little foggy on how, a year ago. or whatever
Yes,
we
that's
changed.
me too.
Because frontage, the size of the lots, all these things played a part of it. And obviously, this parcel does not have frontage. And how does that, I guess I'm looking for some guidance on how do we look at this?
Have to look at that prior approval, but there was site plan approval. And we had addressed those issues.
You have
So-
the notes, Lisa? Not for me, I don't.
I started to look for them and then stopped.
I could.
Well, we received a bunch of emails from
Yeah.
the neighbors.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
Previous,
Yeah, just so you know, we've gotten a few emails from the neighbors, so pointing out that there are some non-conformances with this lot, this particular lot, and this zone change. So we do need to take a look at those, and so the setbacks and the frontage, it would be good if we could figure out how
well,
an
I think
idea of what happened, what we did.
fact that if it's going to be left zone,
Commercial A to residential. Yeah. The three of the parcels.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, in that area and that corridor along the Route 92, RM seems to make sense for that particular area, but I wanna make sure that it's within, that it meets all our setback, all that stuff without,
Doesn't mean anything.
see with variances and everything.
so it says that was decided to deny the zone change to RA for this parcel.
Right, you did, yeah.
Right, there was, it was sort of a compromise with neighbors, like,
Right.
let's wait and see how it goes,
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
thing.
And we were 100% on board with that. I mean, we went through the
Yeah.
permitting process. It wasn't until we got to the financing, the bank said, these
So
numbers
did
don't make sense in 6
the
residents.
buildings that the zone change did occur, there is not any residential activity?
That's correct. Nothing was ever built. Yeah.
And so I guess what is the goal from here on, to continue to try to make all of it, or just now
No.
this building?
We don't intend to come back and request specific relief after this. So we're trying to simply to add the 13 residential units that allow for the project to be penciled out, and then we'll build them and be done. So each building would sell that commercial component as part of it.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm a little confused.
Say that again.
Yes, so if I understand your question correctly, you're saying, are we gonna come back and try to change future buildings to residential? Is that correct?
No, I guess, well, everything you had was already approved, so are you, nothing has been done?
Yeah, that's correct.
So
Yeah.
what is the plan going forward, to actually complete the project?
Yeah, right.
And why
So
do you need this fourth building in order to?
what this does is it adds 7 residential units to, I'm gonna call it the overall property.
Mhm.
So by the zone change to building 3-4, that gives us those 7 additional units. Then the cost of construction makes sense when you're amortizing the cost of construction over the 13 residential units. So we would-
It's for financing.
That's
You
really what it
can't
is.
finance it unless you get the additional units.
That's what it is.
Um,
Yeah, because I
So-
thought before, part of the plan was to go ahead and see how it worked out in the space, and and then because that building was closest to the neighbors, especially with the slopes and everything, see how that, and so nothing has been changed on the property.
That's correct. That's correct.
How long is their current owners of the property? Did they build it?
No,
They
goodness,
buy it?
Dr. Bonds here, you've owned the property about 3 years now?
2 years, 3 months, February of 20. Yeah. And at least this 3-4, maybe they're all vacant, but certainly 3-4 is vacant. Is that
Correct.
intentional? Did you stop leasing it? Did everybody leave and you couldn't refill it?
Correct, so there was only one tenant when we had purchased it, who were already about to, the lease was gonna get done that year in August, and we've been trying. We've been trying to use it as a commercial, and has been difficult to do, it's just not as much demand.
Lisa, do you know when we approved the site plan, what date? June of last year, maybe?
Yeah, I've been meeting minutes from the planning board, was June 26th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I narrowed it down to the summer.
yeah, and what do we have as far as how long they have to pull a permit on that?
I don't think.
Yeah, it was approved, but I don't think it was pulled.
Mhm.
So we would have to take a look, if it's going from R8 to RM, take a look at the parking requirements too. Going to apartments
Mhm.
on the upper floors.
Mhm.
And did we ever, and you're probably telling me you've seen it, there was always a question in my mind of access.
I mean, we looked at it back then.
And
So I
there's
have
an
to-
there's an easement
There
or
were
something that
easements and
gives
all
them.
kinds. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, all
There
right.
were.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I know, I have to look at it again, but I think again, much like the one right before us, the question is, in general, right now, they have an approved site plan on this piece, they would need to come in for an approved site plan on that piece. But the question right now is, should it be, RM?
I don't have a problem making that change. If that helps him rent his property and make it financially solvent, I'm good with that, as long as it meets the code for the other requirements.
Well, right, and that would be, you know, what would be there right now would be the office building. It would be, I'm not sure if it's a conforming or non-conforming use in that zone. And then,
Non-conforming the front yard setbacks, certainly.
And how does it work again for like the road frontage, even though when we approved these, so it's a similar situation, and I mean, these essentially could have been apartment buildings to begin with. With a typical entrance into it, so I'm not as concerned about the road frontage.
Yeah, it started as barracks, I mean, it started as residential
Yeah.
years ago. So to go back to that isn't a
Right.
stretch in my life.
well, you know, and the question is, does it conform with the comprehensive plan? Is residential appropriate there? Is this an appropriate zone? And if the answer is yes, and you make that recommendation, then still have to come back for site plan approval,
Right,
right? You agree with that?
Yeah.
Brian?
We have no problem.
So when I was looking at it, keeping in mind that this is not for site plan approval, this is just recommendation. One of the first things that I picked up on is just some kind of housekeeping stuff. This, I guess it's site plan, you know, this has CA on there. This has got the buildings labeled with, numbers. And then we've got other documents that show it as 4B. It's kind of all over the place, it's kind of a confusing site, especially the way it came to us before and what wanted to be done on it. And then when you look at, you know, you talked about fencing and trees and all that kind of stuff, and you know, I'd rather not look at all of that stuff individually right now because it's not what was on our task, but there are some things that I think when we come back, if this gets approved, that we would be wanting to see, and the parking counts were something that I looked at as well, but then outdoor spaces, dumpsters, all that kind of stuff. I think there's only one set of dumpsters on the whole property. And then the zoning is all over the place.
Does this site plan include the site plan that was approved already, or is this any changes on here?
Anthony, do you know that? Yeah, I'll have to confirm with the
So we're
architect.
not really looking at the site plan right now
Yeah.
anyway, but.
And then like the parking counts on this sheet, it's saying proposed residential, 13 bedrooms, 13 spaces, but when you add them up from the proposed use total, it's 18. So it just needs to be
Yeah, but I would just keep it in mind, because if you come back for site plan approval, if you're making any changes, you'll have to do the existing site plan as a
Existing
new
approved, so
submission,
amend that.
correct? If they make changes or amendments?
It can be a whole separate, it's a separate lot, it can be a whole separate site plan. If they're gonna continue with this,
If they keep what they
okay.
already submitted, but if they make changes to the other buildings. what do
Well,
they
and
have
the
to do?
acreage is all all the different things that, like on the, application, application to the planning board, it's got plus or minus 0.9, RA to RM.
Yeah, so.
On the seeker, it's got 0.4 plus or minus. You know, question number 2 on the seeker, I think needs to be looked at again. And then question number 5B is it consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, and that one is supposed to answer, so, some of these things need to be looked at, and for the record, I think that, zoning is using the ODAF.
Oh, really?
We had submitted the updated version of that, that was correct, and I think you guys had that as well. But the point is taken, though. We need clarity in terms of how this is gonna be looked at as a separate parcel or as part of the larger project. We'll chat with your planning staff to confirm when we resubmit for site plan that it's correct and consistent.
I was gonna say, I look at this as a positive movement in what we had in the town of Manlius. And I think the zone change makes sense with what they're trying to do and how they come back to us with the site plan.
Yeah.
And parking and all these other issues, we can deal with that later. But I think right now, the question is, does it make sense to recommend for the zone change? And I think it does.
Okay. Before anybody makes a motion for a recommendation, last time this came before us, we did note something about the lot 1A in the front. That is zone CA right now.
That they don't own.
Right,
Doesn't matter.
right, but we had thought if this area is RM, it might make sense to include that parcel as part of our recommendation.
In hopes that someone might want to change it.
No, the town board can do it on their own.
Oh, they can't.
Absolutely, the town board can do it on their own motion.
I'll be honest, I will not recommend another person's property to a zone change that they have no knowledge of, they haven't applied for. I'm not going there. That's just me.
I agree with Rich. This is beyond our remit.
Well, remember, the planning board is the recommending body,
That's
the planners. So if it's a bad plan to have like CA, then you can recommend. It's a recommendation, it has only as much teeth as, but you know, the last time we did say, and you may have consented on that, but.
I probably did.
I think I remember saying
I
something
take
like
it
that.
it's clear everyone that lot 1A and lot 3B are separate lots. There's no property line between them on this.
You're going off the survey numbers and names?
It's a week from last time they were all separate.
But there's just no, on the south side of lot A and the north side of lot 3B on my drawing, there is no dark lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, this might be an opportunity to, again,
Well, this is just kind of off the.
incorporate more of the comprehensive plan
But
for
there's,
that
there's
corridor,
different lot.
just as a recommendation.
Now, is building 2 not owned by this team? Is that a separate?
This lot 3B. This was part of the.
Struggling to follow, not myself, no, which one?
So is lot 3B,
Yeah, that's all owned by the same owner, which is,
which is your client?
that's correct.
So all 4 buildings are owned by your client?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So
And it
lot
was,
1A is a separate lot?
Yeah,
That's also
Lot
correct.
3B.
yeah.
So somewhere there's a property line, we just don't see.
I think to Ryan's point, this needs to be cleaned up, but from the last time this came in, Ryan's client owned the 4 buildings that are the former military dorms. And the out parcel is the one up near the street, depending on what map we look at.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Yeah, and I think last time we had the same issue, there was just some confusion and some probably.
Yeah, these comments I'll take back to the design team, so that when we come back for the site plan approval, it says it's a cleaner and more succinct.
Has Pathfinder Bank verbally said to you that if you have 13 rental units, you go through with it?
They did, and I provided a copy of the commitment letter to Mr. Gier as part of the original, starting the conversations again as well. So I have a copy that I can show it to you as well, but yes, they have committed to that.
But also, back to my one about lot 1A, just to think as from a planning perspective and a comprehensive plan perspective, with nothing on that property as of right now. CA can have drive-throughs, they can have fast food, vehicle repair shops, vehicle dealerships, recreational vehicle sales. So establishments that RM does not have, and it is primarily a residential area, so it is something for this board to consider.
Wouldn't we consider that if and when somebody comes before us to develop it?
It's a recommendation.
So,
As part of this, you know, because now you're sitting with this kind of island of a commercial
Yeah.
piece in front of this.
it's not a residential area now.
I will not recommend the town board to take somebody's property rights away from them. That's just me speaking, but that's where I come from.
strange little islands of commercial property in the middle of residential.
It's there, it's commercial, and maybe at some point in time they come in and they say, we'd like a zone change to whatever, and we deal with it then, or when they come in with a site plan, they have a right to have that right now, and I would not recommend to take that away from them.
But you
It's
also have a
unfortunate.
right to other things like that. Zoning is always, you have some rights and not others. I don't necessarily disagree that whatever zone does some limiting quality to it, whatever, or what to do with the property.
Well, I'll ask you a question. What if you own that property? Would you like us to recommend to decrease the value of your property?
I don't have to decrease it, I guess. I do not.
If
know.
we take that. All right.
But Just as a recent board member, can we suggest to the town a zone change which will end up with a non-conforming building from the start?
Well,
No frontage, no lot setback,
well,
lot too small to comply with our zone.
it'll just be sitting there, you can change zones, and then we have to start seeing
Then it
if
becomes
it needs
a
variances
pre-existing non-conforming use and it's okay.
at its,
And I just,
basically,
I mean, if
yes,
that's what happens, fine, I just don't understand it.
yes.
We can
Yeah.
propose a zone change with a building that doesn't conform with the requirements of the new zone, and everybody says, yes, that's a procedure.
Under what it currently is, which is a commercial building, would be a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Fine, I just trying to understand if we can do that.
So I would like to make a motion to make a positive recommendation to the town board to change it from RA to RM. That one person.
I'll second that.
I have one other question. How, on a probability scale, how certain do you think it will be that the project that's been outlined and put the residential use to these 4 properties is going to occur?
I feel very comfortable. The general contractor's been
On a
selected.
percentage basis, what's very
100%.
comfortable, do you think?
I'd say 99%. And I say that because it's not my deal, it's Dr. Bach's deal. Things are outside of my control. If you're asking me, I'll say that financing's in place, the project's been bid, it's been scoped. And the
Including
zoning
this building.
changes. Yeah, right. We need to go back through the building permit process. We would have relied on the future site plan approval, you have to go through the entitlement process. But I'll say that, there's a demand for housing. There's a stronger demand for housing than there is commercial.
That's fine, I say that because I walk around this building, and it's got rotten sills, it's got real columns, where the existing siding runs to the ground, it's looking pretty bad already.
Yeah.
And if something we can do will bring that property to some conforming quality, I think it has to happen, because it's on the verge of really becoming pretty decrepit.
I might add something to it. So that's probably what we're waiting for, because that financing that we had secured included the outside exterior, changing the siding, getting the roof updated. All of that was included when Pathfinder agreed to finance. But it was as a package, and I could not.
I asked about the likelihood of the project moving forward, I certainly would support this, but it's got to get the project happened. You can't do this, have it sit for another 2 years.
So I've had my financing for 9 months, and I'll have to apply again because they couldn't wait any longer, but by principle and on a document, they have agreed to.
Okay, so we have a motion out there and a second. Do we have any other motions, or do we want to take a vote?
Second, so.
Okay, so we'll take a vote. All in favor of motion made by Rich, second by Aaron?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Any opposed? All right, motion carries for a positive recommendation to the town board from RA to RM.
Thank you all for the time.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is an initial presentation for a two-lot subdivision on 7884 Salt Springs Road in Hugo. Tax map number 096.08-32. James and Sophie Dixfor. Do you have anyone here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. You wanna
Yeah,
come up to the podium? We
Yeah,
have a couple questions.
Yep.
But if you wanna let us know first, if you wanna introduce yourself and let us know what you plan to do and what your
Sure.
goals are with the subdivision.
Yeah, so, my name's James Dixor. My brother and I own the property jointly. It's been in our family for, it's my grandmother's house and then, past my mother and past my brother-in-law. My wife and I actually lived in a house from 1998 to 2005. Then I took a job, relocated down to South Florida. As part of taking the job, my wife gave me the ultimatum that we keep the house. I had 3 years to decide whether or not to stay in South Florida or not. So we kept the house and it has sentimental value, but after 20 years, I think we finally decided we're probably not moving back. But we'd like to retain the adjoining land and figure out what we're gonna do with that. So what we're looking to do is just subdivide the property surrounding the house so we can sell the house and then retain the remaining property.
Okay.
So before going any further, the applicant is complete, is that?
I have the completed one.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have no official plans of the, like, what you would reasonably wanna do with the development of the land, would you leave it?
Yeah, we're gonna leave it as is until we decide what we're gonna do. I mean, we've thrown around the idea of possibly moving back, building a house on it, that sort of thing. But, you know, we're not really,
That's fine. Yeah, we had. I don't know, does anybody have any thoughts?
I can start you off, and that might lead other people in the Rich to do it. You wanna start?
Oh, go ahead, no.
Have you had any conversations or any thoughts about if you were to want to put a house on here, where your access would come from?
so I think there's access both on Duguid and on Salt Springs.
Is that confirmed? Can we confirm if that's even possible, Doug?
Yeah,
Now
that
we're
would be
talking
my
about
recommendation, get, something from the town, the county on those roads that there's adequate sight distance.
For a driveway?
Yeah.
Mhm. The other thing we were wondering is,
Wait, can I make a, would you request that, or would the applicant would request it, or how would we?
The applicant usually requests that.
Okay.
That's what we've done in the past.
Because it's an initial presentation,
Right.
these things will all come up.
one other thing off the top here. We're not super crazy about the area behind the house on the lot. It's just already the shape of that lot two is a little unusual. Would you consider just kind of, if you wanna come like squaring this off? Because we've had issues where we've got these little sections of property behind somebody else's house with no frontage, and then down the road, people wanna put stuff here, and then it's all of a sudden, it's like right behind people's houses, so like something like squaring this off.
You mean adding that to the lot
So
with the house?
Yeah.
one way of doing it would be if you came from here, this came straight out like this,
Yes,
and then this goes with this. Rich will look at the building envelope
Yes,
for
I
us
want,
and tell us
as a matter of fact,
Mhm.
yes.
where you could, given setbacks and things, it's a lot of acreage, but is it buildable acreage? And that was my initial question, was where would you get your curb cut from? Because this might not be feasible.
Mhm.
It's a very strange little piece of land, you know? We're trying to look to the, future
Mhm.
and, you know, we wanna prevent any headaches down the road too, where, we might be put in the position to review if this were to get, want to be subdivided further and with a lot of little lots. Because that doesn't really fit in with the context of the area. And so while we don't need to know what your future plans are, it helps to have an understanding, especially with where, if it is to become a residential lot for a house, other than just the way it is, how that might be thought about. And when we see these kinds of plans, we do like to see the dash line showing the setbacks that should be in the envelope, because in just taking a little time to go through the exercise, it might answer some of these questions for you.
Right.
Like, hey, I don't have enough room for a septic and a well and a house, a tennis court or a pool, and like when you start to kind of think it through, all of a sudden it's like, well, does that really in the best interest of my family?
Well, and also it's really about, again, about planning, right? It's a planning board. We're like, well, we want to do this. The question is, does it make sense for future development?
I'll address your question, because it's a good,
Yeah,
This is
that was.
an idea.
That's like 6 acres though, and they're hoping to hang out in the world of the property. That's why I think the surveyor thought this was a really nice parcel to sell a house with.
It is. There's no doubt that, you know, what you wanna do is good, but, we have to think down the road to what could happen to it after you have it, or if you sell it, whatever. And looking at the best interests of the larger scale, not just this one parcel. And while it is a lot of acreage, it's kind of wet, it's not a wetland, but there is some wet spots in there and stuff. And I think in thinking through it a little bit further, you know, then it kind of begs the question of, is it feasible in the first place? Just because it's a big piece of land doesn't mean you can develop the whole thing. Do you know where I'm kind of going with that?
Yeah, it's not that, probably, it's been in my husband's family since, I think, what, 1940? 1941, and we have children also, and that was the whole point, is we never really wanted to develop property. We've been approached at least 100 times over the last 19 years, and we've held off, but we also don't want to be landlords anymore, and we're paying utilities and taxes and homeowners insurance on a home that is empty at this point, just because we had tenants, and for the last 3 years, we've spent our time getting the house, you know, prepared and kind of cleaned up from that exercise, and we just don't want to do that.
Completely understandable. It's just our job to look at the future of it, because while you might have all the intentions in the world, we see a lot of people that do come before us whose situations were that, and then all of a sudden it's different, and somebody else is before us for the same land wanting to do something entirely different. So we just want to make sure that we're putting all of the things out there that would need to be considered.
My other question, I'm sorry, there's one more thing before. Do you know anything about that little strip on Do Good and?
Yeah, I think that was originally an access. Again, I think my grandfather had, you know, thought of developing the land. And I think that's why that was put in.
He died about 20 years before Jim's grandmother died, and she just. Everything stayed exactly the same. You know, lived in her 90s. I also thought there was a discussion once that those other 2 parcels might have been part of his original property, and that he sold them at some point to people who built homes there. Yeah, which is why it looks so strange, but it was probably smart to keep that access point.
I agree.
You know.
That was
Well, because you never know what's gonna happen in the future,
Right.
and that's what we're trying to lay the groundwork for as well.
Okay, Rich, go ahead.
Okay. When friends of mine, or people that I know, wanna buy a parcel or a house, I always tell them to take a look at the master plan to see what might happen around your house. So I have no problem with this land behind the house, this larger parcel, because the people, whoever they are that buy this, have to understand that there could be a house behind them at some point in time. And that's not our responsibility to tell them, or your responsibility to tell them. It's theirs to investigate and find out what's going on around the property. And I think I am very comfortable with this 2-lot subdivision. At at some point in time in the future, if somebody wants to put a roadway in and create 3 lots or whatever, we have an opportunity to then take a look at it and say, yes, no, whatever. So, you know, lot 1 is large enough, it meets our code. Lot 2 is large enough, it meets our code. I have no problem with this subdivision. But I'm just one vote.
Does it create an unbuildable lot in any way? I guess my only
Yeah.
real question is, does this subdivision create an unbuildable lot out of lot 2 in any way?
The only thing is that what Doug said is to check to make sure there is site distance, that you can get a road cut.
Because I hate to remove this and have it be an unbuildable lot.
Yeah.
And that's the question. Can you get the road?
I think that access on Newgood, that 50-foot wide access way. And I'd have to drive down there to see the site view on that. But knowing where that is, I
Is it
think.
past the crest of the hill?
This is traditionally a bad area, if
Yeah.
you recall.
Right.
That's the location where the supervisor was always in battle with the highway superintendent over the mirror.
Yeah.
Because people had problems accessing that driveway. So I think it's prudent just to get, the highway superintendent to review both spots.
I think this is a hill, the hill goes down,
No, it goes up first.
so.
Salt Spring Tea, it goes up.
It
Goes up
and then-
down.
and
And
then-
then it
goes
goes
up, it
down.
goes
I don't know where the crest of the hill is,
I
what
don't
I'm
either.
saying.
I don't either.
But that
And then
hill is
that
shown
Newgood
on there.
intersection.
Yeah.
I didn't
Newgood
look at
intersection
that.
is notorious.
That was why that was my first question.
Traffic accidents.
Is it?
I think 600 feet on Salt Springs Road there, you can easily get out. I've biked up and down that road many times. Getting on Salt Springs is very straightforward in sight lines. Do it, yes, the up and down, biked on it many times. Very tricky in parts. I just don't recall this particular stretch well enough to opine, but
It's pretty steep.
Is
I
Salt
think Salt
Springs
Springs is a much better,
access?
option. I mean, with,
But if you look, right, I mean, that, you live there, that intersection's high accident problem. We're constantly in the cemetery taking cars out, we're in the cemetery.
I think Aaron's right. Let's talk to Rob and just see if he thinks there could be access anywhere that is.
So you've got 2 entities, right?
Is this
Salt Springs
Salt
is a county
Springs?
road,
Yeah.
Newgood is a town road.
Okay.
Does it
That's why I would, that's to get the information for both.
Yeah.
And the control's office probably could do that for you.
I think that's reasonable. But other than that, I personally, I don't have a problem with this. I think it makes sense.
I don't either. I think the lot size and the breaking off is good and it's close enough to the, in size to things that otherwise in the area. Is that on septic or?
It's on Salt,
Yeah.
which is why it's the large
Yeah,
lot.
so it seems like a well thought out decision. We just need to kind of follow up with a few of the pieces.
I agree.
Well, you can call for a public hearing, which we have to do. And then give time to give some time. So when would public hearing be available, Lisa?
On July 8th.
We potentially have 2 other public hearings.
Well, and while they're looking at that, there was a couple things on your EAF. Again, number 2, does the proposed action require permit approval or funding from any other government agency? Would that be us, them, the town? I mean, how does that work?
Sorry, I'm looking at pictures, very lovely pictures.
Number 2. Page number 1, question number 2. Does the proposed action require a permit, approval, or funding from any other?
The answer is no.
It's the
The answer is
approval.
They said, no. Oh, approval.
Wouldn't they need approval from? Any, that was a question.
I
The
think.
answer is no.
Not a concern.
Other than us.
For me.
No, there's no other. Except that we're saying we want information.
the consistent number 5 on the second page, consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, it says NA, but we actually have one, a comprehensive plan, so that would either have to be yes or no. Right?
Yeah.
The wetlands came up as a yes because of the EAF, mapper, but I looked up what we know, and it's not on that site at all. Because that was kind of a, I mean, there can be, but it's not on a map.
Yeah.
You still wanna be, do your due diligence. And then my only other questions were about potential curb cuts and building envelope sizes. And that's something we'll put back in your report.
One of the things that we do when we approve a subdivision is we look at building envelopes and have it mapped out on the lot where it's gonna go.
You take your setbacks basically in there, they become the dashed line showing where you put.
So you guys wanna see that next time?
Yes, please.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion for a public hearing?
Okay.
Let's do a motion for a public hearing for July 8th. Second, or made by Don, second by Arnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we will schedule a public hearing for July 8th.
Okay.
And hopefully you guys understood what you can work, but Lisa can help you
Yeah,
through what you need to do.
okay,
All right,
great, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are you good, Joe? Stay with you.
No, you don't wanna do that.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is for a site plan and update of current special use permit. We're looking to possibly set a date for a public hearing, for the Tracer Tech indoor driving range at 6940 Sheph's Corners Road, East Syracuse 13057. Tax map number 041.01-08.1. I see we have someone here for the applicant, and I know you've got some new information to present to us.
Yep.
You wanna go ahead?
My name's Evan, engineer for Graves, who owns the project. As you may recall, last time we were in, there was a question about the existing special use permit in the golf course. And there were a couple things missing in the application, one which was the mini golf and the parking lot expansion down at the golf course. Rectified those two things. And just wanted to come back with that information included in the application so that we can look at all of that at the same time.
Okay. And we've also heard back from, we submitted to the county, we heard back from that.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, show us.
Yeah. So I think. It's just, so this is the overall site plan, where we've got which you guys have seen, this is not moved, this is the 18,000 square foot Tracer Tech building with the parking lot to the north. Stormwater basin up to the east driving range, enclosed driving range off to the south over the existing driving range. And then what we did is further down to the south, we're now showing that parking lot expansion adjacent to the existing parking. And then Karen, with your comments, when we were in here before, configuration, that parking lot, existing parking lot being a mess as far as parking, well, fine. But with the expansion, what it allowed us to do is geometrically sort of lay things out so that the parking made more sense. So we took that under advisement as well when we laid that out. And then I also have, which I think you guys may have seen. And Rich, I know this is your comment last time we were in the mini golf. So we got with the mini golf design group and had them put together an actual design for that. So that's how included.
It's a first for me, design some golf courses, but I've never even looked at a mini golf design.
I could go down that rabbit hole, I think. That'd be fun,
It's
but,
very interesting.
couple other things that I thought we could talk about tonight. Well, I guess procedurally, we'll leave that up to you guys, but some of the other things that we have discussed, as you may or may not have seen, are the color renderings. So we'll talk about the building. We also had a sign, John had a sign company do up a sign with colors, dimensions, that sort of thing, which have been provided to you guys.
Does anybody have any questions or comments so far? Go ahead.
Want me to go? Okay.
Yeah, sooner the better.
On CA 120, which is it's actually the utility plan, it's probably the site plan too. I was wondering if you would consider, or doing away with the concrete curb islands and just have it be striping. I know there's a light pole, and there's light poles in a couple of them closer to the building, but, I'm not sure that, I think it might just become a maintenance issue. If they're only a few feet wide and they're concrete curb. Growing well, stone will just get displaced. I know you've accommodated for them in the way that you've done the snow storage areas, and I see that, but if, you know, not having them, I don't think they're really bringing any added benefit to the site, other than if you didn't have them there, you could, you know, plow differently too, you have options.
Just keep going, they go through.
They can just be striping, and then your light pole base is obviously affecting them a little bit, but anybody who bumps a curb over is gonna hit that light pole base anyway.
Did anyone else have a comment on that? That's no legal comment. So,
Then we have on 150. That was down in the new parking area. I think I kind of went through by the set in order, even though I'm jumping around the sites. And I appreciate what you did as far as, you know, laying that out and everything. And I know that it will be hard to strike the gravel. It's done, people do it. You just have to do it every year or twice a year, and that may or may not be necessary, but it looked like with just the one curb cut there into the existing asphalt part, it could be kind of tricky to get in and out and around, and that creates kind of a choke point there in front of the building where the handicap access, and people might be coming with their cart or with their golf bags, and you know what I'm saying?
I had a feeling someone was gonna bring that up, because we started struggling with it too,
Yeah.
but the counter to that is if we had a second curb cut in there, or we did something else. I think, this is kind of a weird analogy, but sort of like corral and cattle. I think if we had another entry point, even on the property and went north, I just think that it would create potential for more confusion with vehicular traffic.
It's nicer to see the confusion happen in the parking lot at low speeds than people trying to pull in opposite directions, pulling out of that
Racing
parking
and
lot.
racing,
Yeah, and the speed limit, is it 55,
No, 45,
45?
right, 45.
But it's a country road, you know, people probably go fast. Would it make sense maybe to, on the road end of where the angled part of the asphalt is, to make a cut through?
No, that's what I'm talking about. You're talking about
Let me find my thing.
right here. Like in here?
Sorry. It's gonna make a rabbit or something. Could you make a cut through
Yeah,
so people
that's,
could come in this way
that's what I was
rather than
talking
have to
about.
come all the way around up in here?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Oh,
I thought about
I
that.
thought you meant put a full separate curb cut through.
There or when you're talking. I think the rest of the three options is just leave it as is.
I mean, it's not like a facility where it's like a shift change and you have mass exodus where there'll be a huge, I'm not sure how the business operates.
You could have to turn it though,
Okay,
you know what I mean?
yeah, so I just feel like it just directs all of this parking and all the maintenance vehicles So this is the maintenance facility, right?
I would agree with that.
That puts everybody through this one little corner, and that's really hard.
You see what you're saying, when you're pulling the block?
There's 3 or 4 spots there, but.
Do you need all this parking? Because you could, if you could knock it through.
Yeah, that's what I think we should not put through here.
Well, that's something for Ed to discuss with you.
Nope, I just got you to.
Don't do that, because I just,
It doesn't, I mean, operationally, he has a better handle on it than I do. I'm just thinking about it in terms of any parking lot, reducing the number of collision points
I
or
know.
access points. See, I think the way you have it set up now is fine, because the traffic will go, if you put that up there, now you're gonna have traffic coming from two different directions, into the parking lot, out of the parking lot.
But all the people that are gonna be parking in this big area are gonna turn right there. The only people that are gonna come up through here are the people that are parking right here or dropping something off. If you de-emphasize this piece and emphasize this for vehicular circulation, it's not just about knocking a spot through. It has to do with, this is asphalt. And it's not. It's a matter of. There's positives and negatives to both of them, and that's what you're saying. And so you guys just, that's just, as Rich would say, I'm just one person, and that's 5%, so I'll give somebody else a chance.
It's an option they can look at
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
decide whether or not.
I mean, it's gonna have to happen on
Yeah.
the property. I got the county's gonna do an additional curb cut out to say.
I don't
But
think
that's
that's a
something-
good idea.
And that's to take care of what you guys already,
Yeah.
right, okay. Yeah,
So
I
that's
think
just.
you guys,
In the EAF, it talked about, the hours of operation, and, I've never been to one of these places, but I did look into them a little bit, and I'm concerned about it going on until midnight. And that really comes down to the lighting for me, because I don't think it generates a ton of sound, right?
No.
The other facility,
Yeah.
sorry. And we have your, photometric plan for the main site that you're proposing, the, driving range part. But I didn't see the photometrics for the, mini golf, but I think those were only 15-foot high lights anyway.
Right.
But the other ones were 33 feet tall, the ones in the parking lot. And I haven't gone and looked, you said the closest house was 350 feet away.
But
that's the person.
that's this house, that's not the nearest.
Neighbor.
Right.
I don't know if we need to think about potential future development like across the street, if we would be impacting.
Well, let's talk about the time for a minute with the board. What are other people thinking about the midnight, the hours of operation? I agree. I don't know what the right number is, but I think midnight.
I think it's like, I think 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
What's the, what's the current special?
Usually got out of work at 7.
Or shifts.
Because it is subject to special use.
Yes.
And our zone is what?
Only thing I'll say about that is, once you establish a business that has certain operating hours, anybody that moves in around, nearby, they understand if that's there, it's already there. But I think 12 o'clock is late.
Just to other businesses that are similar, a lot of their business is between 10 and midnight. It's an entertainment facility where people come and they stay till those hours. It's similar to a Dave and Buster's and stuff like that, which all these facilities are open till midnight.
I forgot about that. I apologize, because I know you do have entertainment facilities, so yeah.
So it's kind of important to be open for those hours to capture those dollars, to be quite honest. Those are big dollar hours. I don't think there's anything, and you did talk about the lights, but there's really not too many people around that area. Except for my building,
Okay,
Golf
and
course.
that's really important in your favor,
Yes,
I mean.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of one of the things that it just felt odd, but I understand what the clientele and there's food and alcohol and music, it's fun, like it's a
correct,
thing, it's entertainment.
yes.
The destination.
On the floor plan, there was a mini golf still shown inside, is that just need to be taken off because you're moving it outside, or you're gonna have a little thing inside as well?
We'll have my house inside as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked about the photometrics for the mini golf. And then one of the letters you replied to the comments, yes, I would like to see a detailed landscaping plan when you get there. I think overall, I don't have a lot of questions on the site plan, I think it was well done. I think that everything was well thought out as far as like site engineering and stuff and all that goes, I think it's, it looks really good, and you have a lot of opportunities to kind of tweak it as you go, if things change, if you wanna do more, you wanna have it more outdoor, whatever. I have one question that is probably pretty strange, but I've been really curious about it. 50-foot fence, and I read what it's made out of and everything. Do you see problems with birds getting caught in it?
No, they're very common. These nets are used like on Route 31 or up on 31. They have the same nets. It's super common. It's not really a thing for the birds to get caught.
I'm just kind of curious about it. Not like little geese coming in to like feed in the open
The
parts.
fence is really more to keep the balls contained.
Well, that too, I know, but this is like an outside thing, like, not if you're gonna lose a songbird in there, but like, if you're gonna have problems, like
Yeah.
airstrikes or something.
Top golf has 200-foot nets.
Do they really?
Yeah, we're only going 50-foot.
Yeah, so that was just, thank you for indulging my question. I'm done.
Okay, can we take a look at the architectural renderings? Can you show those, and then again, I wanna hear people's feedback on the building, the architectural drawings and the sign. You wanna talk about the sign first? Yeah, let's show can you pull up the sign?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think some of the stuff, if people committed, they have no problem with the sign, okay? But hey,
What are the sign requirements in the RA are similar, or the same as?
Did you design the sign to be code?
Yeah, I think it's conforms to code. That was the side guy. We had it all figured out.
then I take back my comment.
Okay.
Maybe it just looks bigger, it's like,
I think some of that has to do with the scale of the text on the sign.
and that's your color, right? Like your
Correct.
branding is that line
Yes.
of green.
Yeah.
The club and the golf ball. I like it.
Exactly.
Is that a franchise requirement, the green?
It's not here.
No, oh, it's not, sorry. Can you explain that to us before the technology? Sorry.
It's
A rights reserve.
That's right.
It's your thing, right? Yeah. So what does everybody think about the green on the building itself?
It's not my favorite, but I don't know what I would suggest instead. I do think green.
Nothing else out there, so it's not.
And it's in the middle of the.
Right.
It's just to set the theme.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
data, what's the structure?
It's not a building.
Metal building, yes. As a golfer, I want to ask you a question. First of all, which way are those openings face? Which direction?
They will face, south,
South.
southeast. Kind of. More south, just the area.
North is straight up.
And how long is the overhang?
I'm not sure.
Review of golf while it's raining or snowing?
We will be able to call for training, so, correct. Because you'll actually be inside, there'll be a garage door that opens up.
Right.
And you'll hit out through that garage door.
Yeah.
You're back, yeah, probably 3 or 4 feet, 5 feet. That'll be safety nets out front, so,
Is there any protection between the guy on my left, Shane's?
there's not, but with, I've been to a bunch of these facilities and nobody has that, nobody has any protection. Doesn't seem to be an issue.
Clearly. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions?
I have a minor comment on
Go ahead,
the very minor on DB one acreage is listed as 131.14 for the, 0.14 for the project. And then D2E section, the acreage listed is 257.3.
Good.
Pick your poison.
Hold on.
The 257, I think it's combined with the two properties.
Yeah.
I assume it was, but I
Yeah.
didn't,
And we, what we call
I think the word private is used for both, so I think they'd be consistent, but
It should be.
each property is about 125 acres.
And Doug, do you have any comments based on like what the county sent back to us or anything on the?
I know that say he's working with, Jeff Phil's office, a couple counties. Here, and we'll work with the split. Aaron mentioned that landscaping plan. I don't know, Jamie, what your thoughts are, or Ed.
Yeah, we talked about that at the last meeting. John headed that off. He doesn't want that because he wants to keep them distinguished, the two operations. Only people that will be going back and forth will be the maintenance people, but they're gonna be on bonus and golf there, so.
I suppose if they own them both, you know, and they do whatever they want, but in the meantime, understand that they can sell it off. They can sell off the other piece. And is this board okay with that?
I mean, I would, I think, cross easement stuff.
Yeah.
If the parking works, right?
I think it can create by half, do you mean between the two facilities?
Yeah.
I think that it could create a circulation issue. If you have connected and in looking at it from that point of view, because
They're probably gonna be.
people would drive their cart, they'd finish or before
Well,
they
that doesn't
started, they'd
mean-
drive their carts up and down, and then you have parking and
It doesn't mean they have to be connected, right? If you have a big event at one, then you have overflow parking at the other, if there isn't a cross easement, then if they were no longer owned by each other, then you couldn't do that. As long as they're owned by both, right?
As long
It's
as
not
they're
an
by
issue.
both, you don't care, and it's not, the parking to one is not critical to the other, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So, and then it's okay, right, so.
Okay. So we would like to see the landscape plan, so, but are we, what is the board think? Are we ready to set a date for a public hearing and kind of see what the public thinks and?
Yeah.
Like the hours operation and stuff? Yeah, okay, so I'll entertain a motion to set a date for the public hearing, which would also be July 8th. Okay, motion by Rich, second by Arnie, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, so we'll have a public hearing. July 8th, should have asked you before we set it.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay.
hoping for. And then how about,
Okay.
what about seeker?
We'll do that,
that.
right, we'll do it right before the meeting, yeah.
Very good. So,
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
How much is the surge?
Share.
12.7.
Where do you go? They're better always.
Stir.
Yeah.
Stir.
I would better. Yes.
And it's combined,
Well, yeah. Are they separate?
Are we two separate parcels and separate projects? And.
yes, but remember, the reason we were entertaining both at the same time was the special use permit expires, I think, a year or two. Right, so we would extend both special use permits for both sites.
Right.
So for all intentional purposes, they are two different sites.
So, are there 10 acres on one and, or is it 12 acres total
12 acres total,
on the whole?
both, but the south parking lot is not too. I could, right, yeah, I could check that and just, is 10 acres is a threshold?
Yeah, I gotta look.
I think as a requirement of the site plan approval, when we get there, whenever that is. We show we want to see.
Oh, no, if
Yeah.
we're gonna do clear type 1, then I.
Let's take one, then we have to coordinate it.
We have to do something about it pretty quickly, like tonight.
Well, I was talking about- I was talking about
I mean, I know we're gonna need 5 acre waiver for.
Yeah. But what we have to do.
So it takes,
Jason, I was talking about across these,
When's that?
Yeah.
now, in case they ever do sell one person, not the other, it's in place.
Yeah, but they don't need it.
They don't want it.
And they don't want it,
They
so
don't want
and that's fine.
listen to me being all.
So,
No, it's their property.
so if they sell it to somebody else, they have no problem not taking them across these. Another property.
They would need, that remains to be seen.
That's what they said.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
why not,
They don't want it.
they don't want it, okay, all right.
It seems fairly well thought out, and so
It's a mistake, but it's not a mistake.
stop telling us to do with their land.
No, I'm not, but I'm just saying that it'd be good to have cross easement. So that if they ever did sell one,
Yeah, seriously, you know, sort of figure that through.
or if they don't, that's part of it. So.
How is it access?
It'll be better. With that,
Do the foundation work or something that's stressful?
yeah, well, they're gonna be stripping it, and grading it.
You should go with that around. Right, Jamie?
So what do you think needs to?
Just a great one second.
Are you looking at the secret thing?
Yeah, we're okay.
Well, I don't believe.
Before you get something else.
You better go before I put my tape.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right.
So very nice.
And there's a non-residential, like 50%.
Do you want me to stop him?
So it's been more than 50% of any of the following thresholds, approximation of house physical concentration of 10 acres. Yeah, we're okay, there's not more than 50%. Okay.
Okay. All right. All right, next item on our agenda is. Yeah, we're setting a date for a public hearing, for site plan for the vet spa, tax map number 086.-01-03.9. So if everyone is, if there's no question, I'd like to entertain a motion to set a date for the public hearing for also July 8th.
I have one.
You just read the number for the med spa.
That's what we're on.
Oh, okay. I thought you were doing it for the golf thing.
We did already.
Yeah, that.
I'm concerned, and I think if we haven't sent it to the fire department to Faithful Fire Department. We should. I'm concerned about the driveway and parking that goes down to where the courtyard is. There's no way for fire trucks to turn around. And they have that building down there that needs fire protection. So I would say the fire chief should look at this and get feedback. Other than
So
that,
we,
I'd like to.
and okay.
Well, the plans change, so
Yeah, that makes
I don't know what
sense.
to
Good
do.
idea. Okay. Anyone like to make a motion for a public hearing from July 8th?
Motion for a public hearing on July 8th.
Okay, motion made by Judy,
Second.
second by Arnie, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Public hearing on July 8th for the AES Center. For the site plan. Okay,
These several years. I did talk to Anthony's office because we discussion,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
The
The plan.
2D line drawings, the back one drawings, the elevations, we're working on that, we were working on this morning, so you can get it by.
yeah, we would just like to have it in time, now that we have the public hearing, so we can post it and so the public can see it.
Sure.
And if you could update, I have a couple comments, can I make them or no? I still am looking at, and this was a comment that I made before, but, and this is something that Doug would wanna chime in probably on. The basins are shown, the bottoms of the proposed basins are like a foot below bedrock. And the reason why, and that's why I had asked about infiltration. The quality treatment mechanisms for the stormwater management are happening downstream of the detention. And so the water from the parking lots and everything else that's running off into these detention basins, the detention basins have a rock bottom. Because when you look at the borings in the area in the grading plan, they're gonna be a foot below edge of the basin. And that creates a situation with bedrock that we have, that the water, before it's been cleaned, is going right in like an injection well. And so oftentimes with these situations, you see the bioretention or the base saver filter, whatever, upstream of the detention where things might infiltrate through the ground. But in this case, you've got these rock exposed basins with all of the quality treatment happening downstream of it. So, and parking lot water is some of the dirtiest water, with the small frequent storm events and the types of things that wash off the cars and the cell and all that into the groundwater system. And then that also led me to see that like all of the stormwater pipes and stuff, they're all gonna be in blasted trenches as well, or it is sometimes drippable. So you've got the elevation of the bedrock based on the borings across the site or the test pits across the site, and then you'll have trenching for all the stormwater pipes and all the structures. So, Doug, do you have any comment on that whole situation?
No, I'm sure Anthony will have,
I'll have
Joe
Joe,
take a look
Do
at
you
it.
see
I'll
what
take a look at it, I'll have TDK come and give the explanation of how they intend to treat that. I believe they intend to blast underneath those retention areas and so just be in more beach area, so automatically going back into that run. Give an opportunity for treatment. I'll let them respond, give a formal response. to that.
Yeah.
I'll
Do you see what I'm saying? And then, on the architectural drawings, I thought the building is lovely personally, but what I noticed is that the way that it's, positioned and the way that what the landscape is shown on the, building renderings is nothing like what's being proposed. It's showing grasses and lovely, and there's none of that in the drawings. So the architectural renderings are also enhanced by the way they're placed into the site, and when people look at that, we think, oh, that's a gorgeous site, but it's not there. It's,
Did they provide a landscape plan?
yes, and that's one of the reasons why I was able to tell that the architectural drawings are nothing like
Yeah.
the real life.
Yeah, no, on the rendering side, the renderings are not coordinated with that final plan, thank you. But I will coordinate.
The ones we get.
Like there's a big sign, there's a big sign shown on them.
Sign on the hill.
Yeah, like that's on a plan. plans, and it's just misleading when looking at the elevations of the building and looking at them from all the road and all the views of the elevations. The building is nice, it's not a slight to the building, it's just that it's not accurately represented.
The landscaping, the renderings frame the building to make it look nice and kind of full and nice.
I know, and
So that's, we'll talk to the engineer, a lot more of those elements.
I mean, you could take off the landscape, it's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
That's not the way it is.
Oh.
Okay,
That's, I just wanted to make those couple comments.
no, that's good, okay. Anything else, Amy? Okay. All right, we're gonna switch from Anthony for a minute, okay, but, so our next item is, for Nat Rowland Consulting for the second presentation and a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals, for 5428 North Burdick Street, the telecommunications building for Spectrum, tax map number 086.02-05.2.
Good evening. I've got everything loaded up on here so we can kind of share. First and foremost, I appreciate both Lisa and your Valerie allowing us to be at tonight's meeting. We had a lot of moving parts getting ready for the submission and we were a couple hours late, so I apologize. Next, I'm going to share my screen here. PowerPoint. Okay, we're good. Ready? Okay. Thank you, Matt. All right. Matt Navarella Consulting. With me, Peter Uhas from Lakeshore Construction. He's the developer for Spectrum Charter 1. First this time, instead of his partner Gary is not available tonight, so it'll just be us talking about the project and where we are. Again, we are here for a recommendation to the ZBA for area variances for this facility. Our previous discussion, I'll just kind of flash past some of these. The location, which should fly in, of the existing facility from North Burdick Street, and that existing facility is going to be replaced, antiquated equipment, and the needs and desires of not only our region here in the eastern suburbs, but a couple county areas, right? 50-mile radius is a hub right here on North Burdick Street. Our area variance request has been modified once again due to considerations and site plan changes, which I'll quickly get into. So our new modification of the plans, which you guys you have in front of you, but probably easier, and I'll just kind of flip through what we've done. First thing is we shifted that building. So that building, you can see the red, used to sit back here, and we were tight, and we had some of our mechanical equipment pieces up front. We have now shifted that building towards North Burdick Street, plus or minus in alignment with where that existing building is. So we kind of talked about if we could do that. And so doing, the condenser units that which are needed to cool the facility went from the west to the east side. So now they are hidden and on the back side, and we kind of talked about could we possibly do that? And Peter and Gary will have to do some magic to get the cooling within that building circulated, but they're able to figure that stuff out. The other thing that was talked about, which we did not have on that original plan, is emergency generator pad. When we actually got that number, it is a pretty big emergency generator piece, and to satisfy the power requirements of this facility. that sits there on, again, the east side, as far as way we can get from the corridor of North Burdick Street. The other question that we talked about is, and you can almost see it in the aerial here, is like there's a service vehicle just kind of sitting in the driveway. We have now provided service vehicle parking off of this shared access drive. So there's room for 3 service vehicles and a walkway to get to the new facility. There will be a gated access entry point. So we talked a little bit about secure perimeter, and we went back to Charter 1 and Spectrum, and this is a mandate. This is not a request, and I'll get into that here at the end of the presentation of the reasoning for that, but the bottom line is in today's day and age, in this very critical piece of infrastructure in this region, we need to have a secure perimeter. So the last thing, because of that secure perimeter, we are showing landscaping in front of that fence to, again, both, we think it's going to be a very nice ornamental security fence, but at the same time, we'll provide landscaping in front of that to help screen those pieces. The other part of conversation that we had a couple weeks ago was provide a phasing plan. What is the stages of this development as we work our way through? So we provided a complete staging plan for you. So we'll start right from the bare bones. The first thing we're going to have to do is site preparation, clear the area, and get everything ready for the new construction. So I call that still phase 1. So the new building construction will occur. The new building construction, as we just talked about in that layout plan, will place the new building, the new condenser units, the security fence surrounding it, the emergency generator. And once that building is completed and constructed, the equipment then gets put in place inside that new building. Once they can turn that switch on, they can turn the switch off for the existing building. The next phase of the development becomes tear down that existing building. We're gonna raise that so it's no longer there. We're anticipating that this type of condition will exist for the foreseeable future. So what is that time frame? And again, technology and the needs and desires of this 50-mile radius will kind of drive that. But again, we're thinking the foreseeable future design life could be 5, 10, 20 years. 10 years. Then the next phase becomes, well, what happens in the future? And again, the critical nature of this location is this is literally a hub, that all of this technology is coming to this location. It's not moving. So in the future, what happens is now the existing building becomes expanded, and this is how this thing can grow further to that south location in place of what was there before. Certainly, when this sometime in the unknown future happens, it becomes back before the boards. We'll still be dealing with area variances, and we'll still be dealing with special permit review for the planning board to make that happen. But again, that comes to sequence of what occurs here with regards to this facility. Architectural plans, and I'm going to flip to the next thing. We haven't had an opportunity with our architect. He was unavailable to get new renderings for us. We have talked to the Twin Ponds and Charlie Brewer. He sent us over what I believe is going to be their final color schemes with regards to what's happening over Twin Ponds. We've agreed that the facade of this block building, which this would be the Burdick Street facing facade. Someone back. Slow down. All right. Can be modified into both proper banding, shadow boxes, and I think we talked about certain shadow boxes. But and Peter will relay again. There's no penetrations in this utilitarian building. The building is a utility building All the walls have to be solid. We cannot have window breaks in this facility itself. So we can enhance and match color schemes, and we can do a lot of different things color scheme wise. I don't have that for you tonight. Certainly when we get through the ZBA and come back to the planning board, we'll have that available. We know what the discussions were a couple weeks ago, so we'll be providing that for you. And again, Charlie Brewer was gracious enough, literally 2 days after that meeting, to provide us the color scheme elevations that he presented to the board that night as well. One conversation and discussion was, well, why is this building so much bigger and what is inside this building? And here's a representation, one of your recent builds, right? Similar, same building, same size. And this is what it looks like with regards to what's inside there, the rack systems, the clear space that is needed for that air circulation and that cooling. So that you can't go any higher than this because the HVAC calculations and the cooling calculations need that airspace. And then again, the corridor runs between each of these racks have to be a certain distance so the racks can be pulled and then inserted. So it's tight. It's, you know, when you look at what's inside that facility, we're right wall to wall with regards to what's happening in here.
And what you're not seeing here is this is the server racks. This is Grand Junction, Colorado, which is the same size building that we're proposing right now as all the buildings that we build around the country. But what you have here is you basically have 7-foot high data racks, which have all the servers on. On top of that, there'll be 3 tiers of what they call ladder racking, which will be carrying all the data cable, both information and DC backup cables. So that takes up almost to within 1.5 foot of the lighting that you see there. Above the lighting, we then have main trucks of ducting. Above the ducting, we have enough airspace for that hot air to stratify and for the return air to pull it back. This is a refrigerated box that we introduced a ton of BTUs from the servers. So it's designed for that circulation purpose. And really from floor to ceiling, that entire area has a purpose and is filled.
What's the height?
Inside, it's a single slope, so on one end of the building, on the high end, this is the outside parapet, you're at 20 feet, and then you're at 18 at the other. There's a 2-foot drop across the 70-foot
West
of the
east.
building, north-south.
Oh,
North-south in our case.
Pardon?
North-south
Oh,
in our
the roof
case
is
on our
runs
site.
a long way?
No, I'm sorry, east-west
Oh, okay.
on the drop. So there's one side that would be gutter that would handle the downspouts and the water. The building is constructed, split face, 12-inch split face CMU. We designed to a 170-mile-an-hour hurricane standard. It's a bar joist, insulated EPDM roof, no penetrations, because obviously water would be the enemy here.
Yeah.
The fire suppression system that's in there is a certified system, which is a chemical system, which basically deprives of oxygen, along with all the warnings and all of that. So we don't introduce any kind of water into the building itself.
Matt, what's the elevation difference? Generator, whatever it is. Back generator, whatever that is.
I created it, Rich, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
It's similar, the road's a foot higher.
Yeah, you got it there, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want a copy?
Yeah, it really isn't bad, Rich, and, you know, we're, we look at, 457 plus or minus here, we're at 456.6, and this is like 455, so it's a foot difference or so.
Even if they have fencing or something.
So this wrought iron fence, which I'm getting to next, will be along the entire frontage of the piece. So we wrought iron fence, and then we will have screening in front of that fence with,
The generator.
so it'll be green giant fuchsias, and then some bushes in between them, but we're looking at green giants, and certainly we can talk about species selections, if we wanna do more of a spruce or something other than,
I guess that comes from the site plan.
Yeah.
I'm just, if we could get back to, I understand, what are the variances that you're looking for and where are they?
Go back one.
Because that's really what we're looking at.
Okay, so there's 3 area variances. We're in the RA zone. Okay, so the RA zone has a front yard requirement of 40 feet.
40 feet. Yeah.
Now with this relocation, we're at 10 feet front yard. Okay?
Yeah.
It has a rear yard requirement of 40 feet. Okay, now when we look at, now we've got equipment pieces, but really our rear yard, we're tight here. These 22, but I got it.
But it's against the pond.
But that's the backside.
Right.
So there's a side yard requirement of 20 feet. And we're at 7 feet at this end, because again, we're as tight as we can to this existing building to construct it. So we have the 4 area variances, front, side, and rear, based on the RA requirements.
Okay.
The existing building is already sitting at that dimensional requirement, and I talked again about the survey and the road taking and what our surveyor is telling us of where that actual property line is. And so we're doing what we can to get this utilitarian building in place.
And that's an important building for business, for everybody in this country. And I guess I get back to what I said at the last meeting. There's really nothing around that that's gonna impact anybody. You got the pond, you got.
Yeah, I mean, if I go, I'll get to there in 1 second. I think I got twin ponds and I got a big area. So we got that.
You're not gonna see them.
But, and again, this is just a Google image of what that wrought iron fence will be, but it's a wrought iron fence, and it is a security fence, there is curb pickets at the top. The landscape plan, I kind of get a little more detail, but a little picture of green giants. We're putting them in place at already at 8-foot height, so we're gonna plant them at 6 to 8 foot height.
That's on the roadside.
That's on the roadside, yes, sir.
The green giant, what type?
Green giant arborvitae. So again, this is what I was starting to talk about, Richard, or what you were kind of alluding to. Where are we located? We're right here. Okay, so Twin Ponds development, this is the latest Twin Ponds piece. The road access is to our north by quite a ways. And this is a narrow, almost undeveloped piece. I think Charlie mentioned that when he was meeting with you last time about sidewalks and discussions of what's happening here. So this is our site location. And you can see that divergent property line, which makes us narrow on here on our east side of that property line. But again, we are somewhat across the street from the new Tesla that used to be the Dodge. Yeah.
I wouldn't be so concerned about matching color schemes to that development because you're rarely ever gonna see them in the same fusion.
We're just trying to do what you guys think, so we can talk about that, but.
Making it an attractive building is difficult because of its needs and its purpose, and I'd like to say thank you, first of all, for bringing us all this information and explaining how it all works. It's really helpful to understand because this isn't something at least that I'm familiar with, but, yeah.
All right, so.
All those things we can address at site plan.
Yes, yeah.
So the other thing you asked us to do is review pages 64 through 67 of the comprehensive plan. So went through that, and the applicable language is this design guideline, of which really it's, I don't know if it's purposely vague, but my answer to this is this comprehensive plan does not mention, address, restrict, or discuss essential facilities, which this is. And or the critical utility infrastructure facilities such as the existing and proposed Spectrum Charter 1. The comprehensive plan does not forbid or restrict the use of security fencing around any facility. And then note that public utility structure are allowed within the RA zone upon special permit. So I just want to kind of reiterate, we did what we could, but there's no really chunks that we can just say, okay. And that's why I know that gives you discretion here at the planning board to say what this can look like. And we're here to listen and do what we can. But I think there are limitations based on what this utilitarian building has to be that we just need to, we can't alter or change from some of those things. My last slide.
Jamie, can I ask you a question? One of the things that I think we're gonna encounter in some, whether it's the ZBA or us, is that the old building has to come down within so many days
Yes.
of the new building. Is that something that the ZBA talks about? Is that part of our site plan approval? Where does that fit in?
It's gonna be CBA.
And they already mentioned that in our first meeting with them before they kicked us.
Yeah, and I think we need to keep in mind that we need to make recommendations to the ZBA.
Okay,
Then,
and that's why I'm.
that's, like you said,
Then it's
the whole,
then it all comes back for site.
but this is really to inform this recommendation.
To just for your, I'll tell you the same thing I would tell that board upon asking. The plan is, once the building is fully constructed and we have our equipment racks in, there is then a migration process.
Yeah.
And it's literally node by node, and to further explain it, so every node could comprise of 5 households or 500 households, depending where the fiber is coming from. So that process realistically is a 6 to 9 month process, because it's done from midnight to 6 a.m. And that letter will go out to 500 households saying, you will not have cable or internet access between this time frame. We've all gotten letters like that from communication companies.
So reasonable time to have the original building come down.
Correct. It's a 6
6
to 9 month
months.
transition, and we are committed to say, upon completion of that, we will razz the building, which will take about 3 days.
So I guess where I'm headed with this is that I always like to have drop dead dates. So from the date you begin construction, you pull a building permit from the building, and you start construction, or however we measure this.
Right.
I need to have a drop dead date. It's a year.
Well, how about more like
it's-
a drop dead date of occupancy? Because that's something we can live with. We can't tell you sitting today. I mean,
Okay.
Peter might be able to say,
No,
from
that's
the
right.
time we break ground, this is gonna take, I don't know,
Yeah.
6 months to build, but then another 2 months to do turnover.
Matt, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. From the beginning of the process of the nodes, moving the nodes, the building has to come down within a year, or whatever the number.
So I can tell you this, in communication on other projects I have going on right now. Veritech, who is the supplier of the HVAC equipment, they are at 42 weeks right now for those air conditioner units. My 300 kW cat generator is at 56 weeks. Okay, so that equipment, the day we get a building permit, before we do anything, that equipment is ordered. Okay, it's the world we live in. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, this building was a 6-month turnaround. Today, it's 12 to 14 months. None of that has to do with construction. I can have the walls up in 3 weeks.
Okay.
I can have the concrete poured today. So to your point, it's very difficult for us to give a drop down, other than we can give projected schedules based on, and I could give that. The day I place an order, they're gonna give me an ETA, projected ETA on my generator. And really, it's the HVAC generator, which are the longest lead times today.
And I'm okay with it, I understand. We have the same problems in our industry. But I need, and maybe it's 2 years, but just a date that we know that building will be gone.
I would be confident to say that within 2 years, we would be at the projected finish. No building, no
Are
building.
you
I
able
just
to
threw
give
that-
the date of like, once construction is completed, it sounds like that, once construction is completed on the new building, from what you said, it sounds like 6 to 9 months is when the old building will be able to come down, because that's not really dependent on supply.
And I would be able to do that knowing when that, and so
So a
upon
9-month
completion,
timeframe or a year.
upon completion, if we had 1 year, we would
Okay.
say
Just
the
know
rest
that
of
something. And
the
so,
lot would be at whatever the recommended finish state would be.
so Jamie, is that something need to recommend the Z.
Yes, yes, and it'll come up again and they can accept that recommendation or not, but they'll hear this, so, okay.
Here, Jamie's typing all this legal stuff. As a Spectrum customer, what will the need to the Spectrum customer when this thing gets up and running?
The equipment here is all an upgraded equipment. It fits in with the plan with what right now is 5G. A lot of the equipment, and it depends your service area. It doesn't matter whether it's Cox Communication, Verizon, doesn't matter. There's 5G technology, but some of the infrastructure cannot deliver that to its fullest potential. So this brings us actually to what the projected technology speeds would be from today to year 5 from today.
See, you're not a very salesman.
Yeah.
You should have told him you're gonna save 50% of what you're paying now.
Wait, I want it on that.
You sound like one of my suppliers. But, and the technology is different, it's growing. So the speeds will change, but more importantly, this facility with the improved systems and delivery into the fiber will provide better service, less interruption. But we cannot, we can't never say never. The fiber is not underground. You follow it to that site, you see those big 3-inch fibers, it's still all above ground. But once it does go below ground, then it gets into the facility. And it really is, the location is obviously looking at the lot, not a strategic location. But there's millions of dollars of infrastructure already brought into that site. And that's why, from a charter standpoint, it's necessary that we expand within this footprint.
And that makes sense.
I don't think it's a bad use of the site, I think that it's kind of unusable otherwise, and you're already there, and it makes complete sense. The logistics of, I'm sure everybody's happy is kind of, I think, more of the wrap, but I have a question about that generator. Is it loud? It's big. I don't know if I've seen one that big. Or if I don't, that's what I was looking at.
I don't have the sounding on it, but the generator itself runs 3 10-minute tests a week.
Okay.
Okay, obviously, when we put that generator in, we're providing 48-hour fuel time run as an emergency service.
Is it natural gas?
No, it's diesel. It's a self-contained tank within
Oh, I know
facility.
what you mean then.
Okay, we do, our specs call for a containment facility,
Yeah.
a barrier around it. But the generator itself, the new ones, it's a generator. Is it loud?
Yeah.
For a commercial generator, it's gonna be loud.
It's a necessary.
trucks going up and down that street.
Yeah, it was just.
Well, and it isn't like, the residential is down the hill quite a ways.
Or the hill now.
So
Or,
I
Russell
think
Bond.
the remainder of anything that I'd be interested in discussing will be back on site then.
noise screens and stuff there.
Yeah, I think that given the building can't be done, a lot can't be done with it other than the color and the block and that kind of thing, that some things can be done with the landscaping. And it's a double-edged sword. It's like, one, you want it to be attractive, but you don't want it to be like, oh, look at that. You want it to kind of be
We want it to be very
also
plain,
attractive.
drive-by, disappear.
There's
Yeah,
a fine
no
line to
signage.
walk there of blend in, but also look expensive.
Right.
Other than just because it's super expensive.
Yeah, I mean, if you're screening that fence doesn't really tell very.
So what do we need to do, Jane?
But I wanted to clarify a couple things with that first. Can you clear 2 questions? The generator and the pad, so you're not requesting any variances for that, you not need variances for that generator pad.
Well, again, our area of variance is the most restrictive dimension. So if we say, rear yard, 40 feet for the generator, we meet that, I believe.
Right.
So,
Yes, you don't.
so we will need, and again, we talked about we are less than 40 feet to this condenser unit, but we're tighter to this corner. So that is, if you want to be very, and we can talk about the ZBA with it, do we need to write the language that the building corner and the HVAC condenser units,
Funny you should mention that.
is that what you wrote already?
We thought of it already.
Yes.
Okay, so again, so that, for that rear yard setback, we do not meet it for the HVAC. And I can give you that type of mention, I don't have it on my.
Okay, no, that's fine, yeah, I think this board would recommend that there's no variance needed for the generator pen, but we would not recommend a variance for that.
I don't,
Start off right.
I don't think so, but
Yeah, the rear yard's 40 feet and we're.
Yeah.
And the other side yard is 20 feet, which you're more than that.
Yeah,
With respect to the, respect to the rear yard setbacks and the HVAC units, can you just mention those numbers again, because those were different than what we maybe
So
had on our end.
I'm just gonna go back on.
from what we measured the other day.
Yeah. I bet I'm gonna go through all of these.
We thought that that
Hit the right button.
tightest point was 21 feet from the rear yard.
Yes. So I have 21.2 feet, which is right here.
So 21.
So from this corner to
Yeah.
here, when we push back, there's a dimension there that Jim gave me, and I can't read it, but it's on the plan.
I think we got it, yeah.
I have a question about measuring these things. When you have all these angles, do you measure
Perpendicular to the property line.
the property line or the building line? So this one
Right, so-
would be this way. This
Yeah,
is
so you go
what they-
perpendicular to the property line, to the building corner is your setback.
So this is just under 40. That's If it's perpendicular, then that's not what we measured off that generator.
So this is concrete pad, the actual building piece is, well, it is type 40, but I'll give you that type dimension.
It's easier to measure it off the CAD.
Okay?
Well, I guess what we
So we'll
would say,
double check that, no question.
what we would say is, and if you're within a foot or something, move it. or
Oh, push it
whatever.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got room there, I got room to get out of that setback for that
So
generator.
that was why I asked,
No,
because
that's
when I
a
just
good point.
measured it with them, it was this way, but I think.
Yeah, no,
it's
we got to go perpendicular to the property line.
Okay, and so back to those HVAC units. If, you know, I don't know how far away they are from the building, but we would like to give a distance that they don't,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed, yeah.
It looks like
From the
they're
back of the building.
2.5 to the face.
Yeah, and again, we coordinate that with Peter, they're talking about from your building face to the framing.
Correct. We're typically, ideally, we're in a 10-foot, but we don't have the room. Because we need to be able to, service techs need to get around them.
Yeah.
And it's also airflow. They're elevated, their bottom intake, top exhaust. So when we choke off a side, we've effectively reduced the efficiency of that unit and make it work harder. So 5 feet would be the absolute minimum we could be off the building. That gives us service and it gives enough ability to pull air from it. 5 to 7 feet would be
Well,
ideal.
they're
The unit
2.5
itself is 4 feet wide.
I think
You
we're
said
good.
8, yeah.
So not to exceed 8 feet
Not
from
to
the
exceed
rear.
8 feet.
So here's a question, the face to face is 2.5 feet right now, but you're also shedding, it sounds like 50 foot of water off that edge of the building, right down between them. Is that a problem?
Yeah, and then.
Well, there'll be a main
All
gutter, there'll be a main gutter with downspouts appropriate to take
Okay,
We'll have a header pipe and then we're gonna collect it with a header.
Yeah, we're not just running off.
So there's scuppers on that roof. We haven't worked up that detail yet, but we certainly.
so we'll wanna see what you're doing with all that water, erosion wise. Cause it's a, what, 2 foot over 50, 2 foot drop? Says the EDM.
Right, yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of pitch on that roof, certainly to get the water from the, across that building face, to get it into the scupper system, and And then, we'll have a pipe collection and a discharge to the, back to the hillside and show that with proper erosion protection and, a riprap outlet and such.
Just make sure the numbers you're giving us for variance is adequate for what you're trying to do. Because if you go to the CPA and they give you variance and you come back with a site plan and you're within that, it creates a problem.
So,
Just
so
make sure.
that's one thing that Peter and I will talk about is exactly, I mean, I got
And Jamie's
the condensers right, but let's just make sure we have the setback from the building properly, so we're living with that, so that, cause that dimension we will memorialize to the ZBA, so
Okay.
we'll give.
I just don't want you to get-
Even for factual, we'll show that offset to that big generator as well, so that we can show that it's, greater than the required rear yard.
Okay.
I just
We'll
don't
make
want
it
you
work.
to get caught where you have to.
No, I appreciate it, 100%.
The other, Jamie, in number 5, or are you doing
No,
something?
go ahead.
In number
Yeah, after
5,
you're done, I will.
in number 5, where we talk about the existing, the old building
Mhm.
being removed within 60 days of the completion
And I
of
think we're
construction, we need to,
9 months.
That's that.
I would probably give them a little bit more time.
I think he said 9 months. He said we had that.
I said it's realistic to say 6 to 9 months. I would, if you wanted to drop down, I will say 12 months because I know that I'm fully protected and nobody here in the board would be calling me up.
That's what I was gonna say, 12 months,
That's-
just
that's
to
not
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, let's just discuss the height of the building. You said that it will be 20 feet
20 feet to the
maximum, sloping
parapet.
down to 18.
The slope is hidden within parapet wall, so it's an
So it's
even.
So your parapet will all look the
It's
same.
all
So it's 20 feet.
So that'll help control your runoff.
Yeah, so we said,
And protecting the
we
site.
were thinking 22 feet, what does everybody think?
It is what it is, because that's what the building
That's what
has.
they need.
Right, so we were saying 22, so 22 or 20?
Not to exceed, you mean?
Yeah. Not
What was the
22.
parapet?
What is it then, 25 feet?
20.
Because there's the roof height and the parapet height.
Right, the parapet is, I believe it's
No,
18 inches, don't have the arc.
Condition of that, it's actually.
I know, there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the question.
Question regarding building height. On these drawings, it says TO masonry 120 feet dash 4 inches, and of course, the TO floor is 100, so that's 20 feet forward. That's the top of masonry. Are the boards that comprise the edge above the top of masonry? You look at
Can I
that
see
roof
which
design,
drawing
there
you're
are
looking
3
at?
layers of flat boards. It's a cross section that's above the masonry.
I'm
I
just,
just want to be certain you got. So
Yeah,
top of
so-
masonry, is that top of roof or just top of
That's
masonry?
top of masonry, and then we have a metal cap on the top of that
And that
parapet.
sits on top of 3 boards, 2 by 6.
That's usually 2 by,
So that adds to the
12.
height.
correct.
All right, so we're a little low. We need to get above, include that in the height of the building. It's minor, but it needs to be included, correct?
Is it below 22?
Correct. So 22, we're good.
Okay.
I got 22.
Okay, and that's what we
Okay.
got.
All right.
All right.
Well, it's probably only like 6 or 8.
It's more than likely on the top there is gonna be either 2 or 3, I can't remember the exact, basically 2 by material cap with.
It's only a few inches.
so when I zoom in, I've got 120 and 4 inches, right?
Correct.
The top
But
of
that's
masonry.
not, that's in what he's talking, that's intersecting of that.
Right.
Of those
Yeah.
caps.
It looks like the parapet's 18 inches tall.
So we're good under 22.
Yeah, well, the that is to the parapet top.
Okay,
But that was a question.
all right, so,
22, we're accommodating, we're gonna be fine.
okay, good. All right, so, Jeannie has been working on a resolution that she's drafted, so I'd like to make.
Yeah, I've also been working at everything.
Yeah, as we're making all these, recommendations. So I make a motion, I'll read this resolution for the board to consider. All right, This board has reviewed the referral from the zoning board of appeals relative to the within project and in relation to the variances requested by the applicant on this property. The variances requested are overall substantial on a piece of property with extensive public visibility. Accordingly, matters of building aesthetics, placement, size, and configuration, all of which are generally within the purview of the planning board, are important in the zoning board's determination of variances requested. This board is also aware of the public service provided by this private entity and its current existence on a relatively limiting site. This board therefore recommends to the ZBA as follows. 1, this board recommends that the ZBA grant a variance in front yard setback of 30 feet so that the structure may be set back only 10 feet from the apparent right-of-way line, where 40 feet is required. The apparent right-of-way line utilized is as per the monument shown on the boundary survey of David J. Urinek, PLS dated 4/24/2024. It should be noted that the applicant had originally requested a 20-foot variance, but this board, after review of site plan issues, recommend the 30-foot variance so the building and its appurtenances could be more appropriately accommodated on the site. 2, this board recommends that the ZBA grant a side yard variance of 13 feet for the building on the north side. The code requires a 20-foot setback and the building would be set 7 feet from the side yard. The building is proposed to be set such that in the rear of the building, it is 21 feet from the rear yard property line at its nearest point. Accordingly, this board recommends that the ZBA grant a rear yard variance of 19 feet as measured from the building's closest point to the rear yard as shown on the plan dated March 13th, 2024. It is recommended that this variance requested carry the condition that the building must be perpendicular to the road as shown on the plan dated March 13th, 2024, and the further condition that the HVAC mechanical utility pads
Wait a minute,
may
that
not.
was- I'm sorry, that was 2004. I'm not sure if that's.
It's exactly, yeah, I just fixed it while I was reading it.
Oh, okay.
I'm at it. May not exceed 8 feet from the rear building face. 4, this board recommends that the ZBA condition the variances herein to accommodate only a single building on the site with maximum of 76 feet length of the structure facing the road frontage and being a maximum of 50 feet in width. 5, this board recommends that the ZBA condition the variances upon the existing old building being removed within 12 months of the completion of construction of the building which is receiving the variance. And further, that the variances do not extend to any additional buildings on the site other than the new building proposed, or any replacement building of the new building as may be applicable per New York State law. 6, the applicant has not requested, and this board recommends that no variance be extended to the placement of the energy generator pads. 7, this board recommends that a condition of the variances be that the height of the single building on the site may be no greater than 22 feet, provided the planning board determines upon site plan review that same is architecturally compatible with the surrounding area and in conformance with the comprehensive plan of the town. 8, this board recommends that a condition of the variances be that the matter be referred to the planning board for full site plan review and approval, and is subject to all requirements of the planning board to assure compatibility with the neighborhood and the comprehensive plan of the town. So if the board is in agreement with that, I'm making the motion for that resolution.
I'll make a motion.
All right, motion made by Rich, second by Arnie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries for that resolution for the recommendation to the zoning board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jamie, well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Let's do that.
We'll be back.
All right, and the next item on the agenda. Sorry.
The motion was by Rich.
Sorry, Rich. Second by Ernest. Okay. Okay, our next item on the agenda is an initial presentation and discussion. This is for the town board and Anthony is here for this PUD, the planned unit development for 5912 North Burdick Street. So if Anthony wants to tell us what this is all about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Rojas. I'm principal of In Architects. I'm excited to present another project for you guys located at 5912 North 30th Street. In reviewing the existing zoning, our parcel is in that brightish red there above the pink kind of surface. It's commercial, zone commercial A, commercial B today. Its existing uses on that parcel is primarily a material supply kind of warehouse, so a lot of delivery of construction materials stored on site. They're sold and then they're picked up. So there's a lot of trucks coming in and out of that parcel. There's a little bit of a showroom space towards the front and some office within that building as well. But there's several buildings on the site, mostly for shipping, storage of construction materials. Within the new land use map and the comprehensive plan, it's that blurry red kind of space there, right to the right of North Burdick Street, that calls for a neighborhood mixed-use commercial as a part of your overall zoning plan. And we're excited to present the PUD that reflects that recommendation. So we essentially took the PUDs that have been accepted by the town previously, the Twin Ponds PUD and then the High Bridge PUD for the senior living facility as the initial framework for this district plan, and used a lot of similar language and kind of design intent into proposing its intended land use. So as you read through this, very similar in terms of land uses along the lines of the Twin Ponds on another project on the North Burdick corridor. The same in terms of density, in terms of building height, in terms of parking requirements. And as you go along, you'll see it's all essentially the same, except for the workforce housing component. So we've committed in this project 10% of the dwelling units to be designated workforce housing, as opposed to the Twin Ponds, which is dedicated 5%. So as it was recommended by the town board, we increased that to commit even more of the residential units on this parcel to be included within the initial design phase of the project. I will move to show you kind of our preliminary design, schematic design documents. So we're
How much acreage is there?
total acreage, I believe I have the parcel here. I think we've got 5.78 acres on the whole property.
The first page of drawings in your packet shows the map. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, 5.8 acres. Yeah, there's a couple of other kind of parcel boundaries and easement kind of areas where there's overhead lines and things like that that kind of add. There's an additional 0.468, which is controlled by the owner, but we think that's primarily wetlands back there, so we're not including it within this area.
Where is
So
that?
yeah,
Sorry, what area?
the area towards the back here, you see it says 0.468 acres. Yeah, that's towards the rear of the property, which is inclusive of the property boundaries of the owner. The owner owns that top, but we're not including that within our design area.
Who is the owner?
So the owner it's going to be a separate LLC, but it's a partnership of Burlex Properties. They'll be developing the site. They currently own the site, so they'll also be the developers. So it's not changing hands.
Is it still used for its use as it appears, or is it vacant?
It's currently under
It
use.
is?
Yeah, it's currently used, and it's his company that's using this as a construction material supplier. He intends to move the current operations off to another site because he sees that this land is much more valuable as a mixed-use property. So he intends to develop this as such and move his current business off to another person.
Sorry, Anthony, I'm trying to match up the, that page with the red line, the red dotted line, and then the next page you showed with, when you showed that like 4.68 or 0.468.
So this little notch on the lower left, I'm sorry, on the lower right.
Yeah.
This little notch that kind of comes up, that notch is the 0.46 acres that I did not include in this boundary.
Okay, and so, okay, I see.
But, so where is it going to be included? Like, what can you put on 0.46 acres?
Right now, we believe it's all wetlands, so we're not gonna develop anything off of that.
But is Is it its own parcel right now? Or is
So-
it landlocked? Now, is it becoming landlocked? Is it gonna be subdivided off?
So you see that our property boundaries, it shows a different number there. 77-3-24.4. But the intermediate lines that bisect that are not property lines shown in this survey. The survey shows the outer edge. You see the dimension all the way to the right shows 266 feet.
The solid line.
That's the solid line, that's the total property boundary. So we think it's all a part inclusive of this boundary, it's a single property. But because all of that area is kind of delineated as wetlands.
It's got a separate tax map number.
it-
Yeah,
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why that overall dimension on the survey would have shown one, but what I could do is we can research the property description and see what the meets and bounds are described at kind of the edge.
Does it mess up their division of square footage and all of that kind of stuff if they
No.
leave it included?
No,
and it's
You-
not
you-
part of the.
You're definitive on the answer, but in your explanation of the square footage, you said, I think. So how can you think on one and be definitive on the other?
the square footage that you see in this overall green boundary, which is also the red dash boundary, that's the 5.8 acres. And that's what we're proposing to develop. The additional 0.4, which the question now is it a part of the single property or is it a separate tax parcel? That I need to confirm with the meets and bounds of the survey to see how that's described.
Okay.
But it's not, we're not including it in the planning of this. So as you see, like, if we get into kind of the setbacks and things like that, we're respective that if that were to be a property boundary, we're accepting the setbacks from that boundary and still planning our buildings as if that was a separate parcel. But I'll verify if that's a single parcel.
Two more questions. So the property below where you've got stuff drawn on that drawing, so below the green line, who owns that property?
So that's a delineated wetland boundary. So when we did our delineations, they own that property to the south of them as well. But that parcel is probably 80% wetland. So there's not a very large portion that can be developed. There is some along North Burdick Street, but the majority is wetland. So because we wanted to make sure that we respected kind of the boundaries of the delineated wetlands, we kind of dipped into that parcel to make sure we understood what that was.
Stormwater for this parcel goes onto that non-project parcel.
So there's going to be, and we'll get this kind of defined during our site plan approval stages, there will likely be underground storage containers for retention. That'll kind of capture all the new stormwater that's produced on this property.
Where will it go?
So we have to define that. I don't have that plan yet done for this. If we have to reduce density to get to a point to where we need to define that, we'll get there, but.
This is pretty low. It's all low in through there, isn't
So, I mean, it seems to be jumping the gun quite a bit to me. Beth, do you wanna weigh in on the issue of the wetlands and, like, even like trying to propose a PUD without a real study of this wetlands issue?
Right on.
Sorry, okay. We just looked odd that the wetland boundary is a straight line across a parking lot.
It's an existing delineation. So there's existing asphalt all along that kind of boundary today, which was it pushed at one point? Possibly, yeah. Yeah.
So,
With that level of study, of really understanding how to control water and all of that stuff, any developer won't invest that time to really study these things without knowing that the land could be developed for their intended use. So if we,
I just think it's a weak,
From a PUD.
I mean, the thing is, and the way that the PUD is gonna work is be like, it's just so critical to the scenario. I wouldn't always say that, but I'm relying on the engineers in the group that this is very dense, right? And how the wetlands affects the density to somehow say then that it's gonna be written, because it becomes code, so much density, so much, this is what it's gonna look like. It just seems like like it's putting the cart before the horse.
Why is it-
I don't say that just because,
Right.
like, this is just a land that's known to be so wet.
Have you done any borings or test pits to see where groundwater is? Because if you were to find that groundwater is like 3 feet down, you're not doing underground detention because it's already full of water.
I understand.
And
Who's the engineer on this the project?
KFA is gonna be doing the site civil work,
but who's their engineer?
Rudy, John.
Doug, do you wanna? I guess my question is, like, for example, we were just doing tracer tech, the golf course, not this, or the, whatever, the driving range, whatever it's called. And not at this particular meeting, but at the meeting they came to first, we were talking about the wetlands. And isn't it like, you have to be not within 100 feet?
We do have that in our code, I believe.
So how does
There's
that
a buffer
apply?
area behind the wetlands, right?
It matches
Yes.
GECs.
So how does that
Does it
apply
match
here, that we're
these?
It does
right
not match
up
these.
against them?
No?
They got it delineated, right, so we can tell.
Okay, and then,
Well, there's things you can do in there and things you can't, but I think
so
so
the
the
circumstance
circumstance,
study would
we
be
can't
the way to go.
give a good review because we don't have enough information, if that makes any
That's the
sense.
bottom, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
and I know you're the architect.
Yeah.
And this is like,
well, and
or,
there's a few other things that kind of jump out at it too, is I feel like the 6 stories doesn't really match the,
wait, so I thought it was 4.
The intended proposal was 4 stories.
4
We
stories,
just
but
took the
still.
language from Twin Ponds of what was approved there. and we
because
just
this
kept
was
that same
asking for
language.
6.
Where did this come from?
Twin Ponds.
So you just copied it.
We used it as a framework
that, yeah.
to
Yeah.
then modify it to fit this
That and the
project.
hybrid, the senior housing.
Well, and
And the senior housing. We took
I'm
your 2
struggling.
previously approved PUDs and took that framework to.
So what Aaron said, this is 6 stories, your plan is 4 stories. Why have 6 here?
Because it says up, does it say up to 6?
It says up to 6.
Next,
So then we show 4 is up to 6. It's-
yeah, but
yeah.
So there's another study that also then comes after understanding the project is here, is there's an economy of scale, like one of your previous, conversations with the developer, that if there was to be a need to have a partial 5th story, or for some reason to increase the quantity of units, that really is more of a financial question. So to be able to have that flexibility is what we were kind of, the client was trying to build into this. But the initial intent was to have 4 stories. as
I'm
opposed to
a
three.
document guy. I'm a document.
here's the thing,
And if you're saying you're gonna build 4, this should say 4.
Well, here's my thing, I don't even think it should be 4, if I'm gonna throw I'll throw that out there, because again, have they talked to any of the Lee
No.
Terrace neighbors?
they're little Cape Cods.
They're
There's a lot of.
4 stories is a big deal behind there, and so I understand, like, Twin Ponds is set down below, and
Right.
there's nothing around it. So I would. So right now, as far as like, I would say definitely not maximum 6 stories, but I'm not even sure I'd put a maximum of 4. I think we would need to come to a common ground somewhere and definitely have a public hearing, to see what's reasonable in this space. I agree it conforms with the comprehensive plan, I agree we've got residential around there, and,
You think it
But I-
belongs to the comprehensive plan at all?
as far as what
The
the
use?
future land use is of that
The use.
area, yeah, the use, but
No.
not the density. Maybe if I'm just throwing all these things out there,
Remember,
maybe
that
even some
we
like,
just got this.
Oh, yeah,
So this is like.
maybe even some, a lot less density, like some patio homes or something that's to take advantage of the golf course access, but this is a small
dense.
parcel, such high density in a small parcel. It's just my thoughts. Anybody
No,
have
I agree, it's too dense. I don't want this project at all. It's a narrow parcel.
It's very narrow,
It,
yeah.
I don't think that residential
Could you
is a bad
define-
use for it.
Could you define a little what you don't like, I guess, so that we can make adjustments?
Well, I will say this, I don't think we're prepared to
Yeah,
like come up with a recommendation right now.
Right.
To the town board at all, and I know that they'll be waiting, you know, we have at least another meeting.
Right.
And then some, and
and I can move on and they can keep their, public hearing open. I'm just wondering, I just also wanna throw a question out to this board before, what would you guys think? We've done this before about our own public hearing before a recommendation, if we get there.
I have no problem with that. I'm not,
I do say this, I don't, so the town board doesn't love to have a public hearing, like, they don't love that we would have a public hearing per se, but it's within the purview of, because that's their bag, right, on the PDD. But to the extent that we want to hear from the public, then the chair can let any member of the public talk who wants to talk. But, you know, how do we get the word
How do we
out to
get
these
this
people?
notified on yet?
I'm gonna say something that probably will get me in trouble, but I'm gonna say it anyway. When we made a recommendation to the town board about PUDs, we put 25 acres as a minimum for a PUD. That was taken out of the law. And what my concern is, as we move forward, is we have everybody now wanting PUDs so they can throw the zoning book out, create their own zoning for the site that they have, and we are creating, in my opinion, only one person, but we are creating a mess, and I have a real problem with that. I've said my piece.
Could we just, I don't know if this, I know you're, did you want to, sorry.
No, you're good.
I don't know if you wanted to share, I do like the outside of the building, the architecture. I don't know if there's more that you want to share, but I just didn't know if it's also worth it to just pull up Google Maps and just look, or has everybody already looked at that?
I've looked at driving around it,
Yeah.
and went and looked at, Colonial Village on Palmer Road's two-story, kind of a dated facility, how it fits in its site. Your graphics here are awful, because you've got these little boxes in the drawing, like there's 3 boxes next to an apartment. So you look at this thing, it looks like there's 400 dwelling units. The graphics, if you have any progress with this, needs to change, it doesn't look so overwhelming. You look at 4 stories on this site, it's narrow. On one hand, I looked at it and said, this is impossible. I said, well, let's not start out so negative. Part of it is the graphics presentation, looking at 3 boxes makes an apartment, just gives this illusion. Isn't consistent with the narrative. I personally did not understand that the whole wetlands issue of managing stormwater. The existing site is pretty much paved, it's almost an impervious site that the entire 5 acres to drive around.
Right.
But this idea of doing stormwater off-site, not within the PUD, maybe that's possibly approvable, it just strikes me as a non-starter. How I would, how be thought presented that way just puzzles me to no end.
The thought was that the owner owns both parcels, so that if we had to utilize land that was off of this parcel, there could be some discussion as to how we re-subdivide, how we combine, how we do something.
What do you mean
We-
both parcels? So
We have
the wetlands?
never approved that before.
I just can't imagine
Never
a
allowed.
key site support system not being within the zoning and fully incorporated within the plan by any dimension.
Yep.
And you drive out there, this time of year, there's probably some good 80-foot trees to the south and some pretty good screening vegetation to the housing, to the single story, individual houses in the north. But in the winter, okay, the deciduous, that's gone. What do you got? It looks so imposing, this thing.
There are existing 2-story buildings there, so.
That is true, and I say, well, what is the height of those versus the height of this? It's a way to begin to measure that.
It may not be economically feasible.
Okay,
So you got a few things going on engineering wise, right? I mean, you've got wetlands, you've got poor soils. This is an area that traditionally we've had a lot of stormwater issues. You have the sewer line that comes from DeWitt all the way over to Meadowbrook Limestone. I mean, it's not a huge line, it's not a 48-inch line, but it's a main feeder. It needs a lot of maintenance on a consistent basis.
Does that cut through the site?
I think it
To the north side.
I thought those were overhead lines.
There's a sanitary line
Force
to
mains
it.
that drop into that down, but the slope on that is extremely low. So it needs to be cleaned quite often. It's a high maintenance line.
But it's a gravity on slow slope.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so. I don't believe that.
All right.
The other thing is on the north side of this, there's a power easement. And the neighbors have been traditionally, we were just talking about this the other day, the neighbors in that neighborhood have been very sensitive to the work that the utility company does. They come in and they've had arborists come in and work with the neighbors to make sure that that screening buffer stays from that commercial property to the others. In fact, when the arborists have come in, we've been called out on codes calls to that neighborhood in and around Manor and Lee Terrace. And utilities has been really good working with us, saying that they will understand the concern. They also, they clean the arbors down, they try to maintain the buffer and the canopy while still doing that. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in and around that neighborhood,
Is that
to that point.
railroad on Central? Is that owned by?
It's a right away still
Yeah.
exists, but
The right of way is still there, but the property is quite dysfunctional.
So there's something that was brought up on the Seven Pines that kind of got brought up again now. I feel that I need to say that it's not the town's responsibility to make projects financially viable. And it's not always appropriate to say that unless we do X, Y, and Z, then you can't build your project. Because I don't think that's how that's supposed to work.
Sure.
You know, to say that you're showing 4, but you left another 2 floors in here in case you need to make it work. That's not how that works.
Sure.
From this end of it. We need to review something that has been thought through enough that we actually can spend the time to really get into the meat of it, and review it, and I know this is kind of new ground, right, in Manlius, and I don't know, in looking back at the Twin Lakes, Twin Ponds one.
Yeah.
There's things that I now know that I would change in the way that we review the PUD. And, you know, not that we made any mistakes, but I think that we can learn from what we did, and I don't think, personally, I'm not ready to look at this yet, because I don't, you know, especially to the south, looking at the wetland stuff, like if you want to utilize that parcel to take care of stormwater or provide recreational opportunities or whatever, then let's see it, like, that's fine, I think there's an opportunity to build the project, it just isn't ready to be reviewed.
Yeah, and you know,
I'll
what
be
would be helpful, we never did that, we haven't done that study yet, so.
Yeah,
You know what
and
would be
the other thing would be
helpful
like
too,
that.
Anthony, would be to provide a survey.
It's small.
Well, it's not a survey.
It's the survey we got.
Did you
Yeah,
just take a
right.
screenshot
Yeah.
and put it in here?
Yeah, it was
No.
a part of this presentation.
If you look, right, Penn Central's on here, New York State's on here.
Yeah,
They're overhead lines, but there's no right of way for the overhead lines. There's a sewer line, but there's no right of way for the sewer. I mean, there's a lot of detail missing here. I don't know what the New York State property is, do you?
You're talking about the.
Yeah, when it says
Oh,
NYS.
top left?
now we're formally,
Yeah, I don't, that, our property bounds.
So
Drop.
if you're familiar with this property here,
yeah,
this, once again, this was all part of the 690 bypass, right? And it's probably combined with Penn Central and New York State issues out here. That's why you see all these different, right? If you go there, I mean, and you drive down Vernon, you look left and right,
yes,
it's obvious, right?
I've
You can
noticed
see-
that, yeah.
You can see where it was.
Yeah.
We should get a detailed survey,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, because I don't see one in the package, I mean, but like Anthony said, it's always got, like,
So I think there's a lot of things here that prevent us from definitely being able to make a recommendation, let alone really be able to review this project. I would add just a couple things too to be looking into is a traffic study with that intersection on 290 and North Burdick Street. That's a crazy, like, really busy intersection. I know they've slowed down the speed limit approaching that intersection, but adding 172 units could be impactful. Also, is this ESM school district?
Yes.
Is checking with the school district. I mean, the owners, developer should do their due diligence and homework and look at some of this stuff, and the wetlands study, I think we would like to see.
But you know, from a pure planning standpoint, some of the things you might wanna look at when you look at PUDs or mixed use overlays is, the compatibility with the neighborhoods,
Right.
how they interact with each other, right? The walkability, how one neighborhood comes to the other, because you're talking mixed use, right?
Right.
So
Right.
what services would people walk to this place for?
I think it's already determined, right? They've already got a couple of sites, from
They've
when
got
I
a couple
watched the
of
town board
tenants.
meeting, they've
Yeah,
got, so
they've
I'm
got
not
two
sure
tenants.
that's. Do you know what the use, what the plans are and what they,
There's a-
so that we have an idea?
There's gonna be a retailer with a showroom in one. There's going to be a office, more business type tenant in the second, and then the third space is left open for, they don't know who another tenant.
Do we know the retailer showroom, is it like something that people would wanna walk to that are in that area?
I don't think I'm at a point where I don't think I can share that yet. but-
Okay.
And see, that's part of the problem, because we have to look at parking. And if one of these spaces is gonna be a restaurant as opposed to an office.
Sure.
Different parking levels.
Right.
And there's a lot of things. I mean, when you look at the definitions of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to, you know, that neighborhood to the north of them is significantly different,
Mm-hmm.
And there's one to the south too.
well, beyond that office complex.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
side of the swampy area.
Yeah, and across the road, for that matter.
I mean, you have some high, like I'm saying, you have a little bit of higher density with Erie Village, obviously, but this is a different.
But part of our recommendation.
Oh, well, that was a cluster development, so that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
We also
And there
got
was a lot of
county,
open space, so.
Yeah.
we got county comments back.
I didn't see those yet. On this?
Yep. I printed it out.
I haven't seen them
You what?
either. I haven't seen them either.
There's 9 of them.
Where did you get that?
They're my email.
The town board sent it to the counter for all night, included it in your packet.
Oh, it's in the packet, okay, I can get it separately, okay.
I thought it was in an
Oh,
email.
sorry, I presented it too.
I can just give you the update. Here's the buildings and located wetlands, town must ensure delineated wetlands in the 100-foot buffer are shown on plans. Consider placing building A closer to North Burdick Street frontage, move parking to a less prominent position, construct sidewalks along North Burdick Street frontage, create internal sidewalk network, having more outdoor spaces for resident use located within the PUD. Town is encouraged to require significant landscape buffering and screening of parking, particularly adjacent to neighboring residential uses. Given the wetland areas on site and proximity of the development to a water course, applicant is encouraged to reduce impermeable surfaces and utilize green infrastructure wherever possible, for example, permeable pavement. Reduce stormwater, protect stormwater quality. Town must ensure all appropriate permits for construction with wetlands obtained prior to condition of municipal approval of PUD. Applicant encouraged to consider structured parking on site to reduce the impact on land and improve the overall appearance of the site. Not sure what that means. Do they mean a parking garage? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Applicant must obtain approval from the owner of power lines traversing the site for placement of parking prior to or as a condition of municipal approval. PUD plan describes a maximum 6-story building height for proposed buildings. This may have a visual impact on neighboring properties, which are generally 1 to 2-story residential structures. Town is encouraged to reduce the allowable building height and require a visual impact assessment to ensure the proposed structures do not create a negative impact to existing neighboring homes. Visual impact assessment.
So our.
Wait, one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Applicant and town encouraged to consider the extension of South Manor Drive to serve as a secondary entrance to the proposed buildings. extension of South Manor Drive.
It's off of together, it's right at the end of the code.
This, the one on the, this one over here.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a cut through.
It-
Super.
We just don't own that property, it's the golf courses, but it was a good idea.
You'd have so many people that would have to go through that light.
Yeah.
I think there's, I
I
think
don't want
there's
to
so many
bring public hearing.
issues to this.
Sorry.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's so many open issues with this. I don't like what I see. Maybe it can be improved upon, but there's just too much to be done. I mean, we had a single building on North Burdick Street that we put off for a month to get additional information before we made a decision on it for a referral to the ZBA. This is a long ways away from that.
So what I've heard is wetlands, gotta figure that out, and how we're dealing with site conditions.
Okay, get a survey.
Sure. Height for the overall building, we don't like the height of it. Anything else?
Well, I actually think that the counties I hadn't read it until I just read it right now.
All those things.
I think that they kind of wrap up all the things that I was thinking about, in addition to the stuff that Doug was talking about, is we need a good, accurate survey.
And I think a lot of those line items are things that are picked up under site plan review. So it's things that we were already accounting for, sidewalks along the road. The issue with the parking front.
We need to see these things at a concept level, like, at a concept level of circulation pattern. You know, like, it doesn't have to be like we're having 5-foot sidewalks that are gonna go here, here, and here. It's more of the concept level diagram of, you know, a fat dashed line with an arrow on each end, and it's red if it's pedestrian, and you know, you get an idea of how that stuff works. And as far as the site engineering goes, under the circumstances of this particular property, it would be very helpful to have a little bit better idea of how you're planning on dealing with the stormwater management, because it's such a low area with known issues.
Right.
It's not just about mapping the wetlands next door, it's about how that interfaces with the site and its function.
Yeah, and I think intertwined with like I mentioned, the traffic study and the density. I just don't know if I feel comfortable with anything higher than 2 stories in that space. Well, they talked about a visual assessment. You know, that's a definable process. And so, that's something that can easily be done.
It's not that it comes into play what Anthony's doing, but this neighborhood traditionally has been one of the significant infiltration, or inflow areas of our sewer system. So over the years, Rob and I have worked diligently in this neighborhood. So if you go through this neighborhood, we've sealed off most of the manholes because a lot of the intersections go underwater.
To the north, the neighborhood to the north?
The whole neighborhood as a whole. And the other thing is, and Rich is nodding his head, there was an issue 5 or 6 years ago where the golf course was going underwater. And the golf course owner was traditionally taking the manhole off the sewer to just let all the water, like hundreds of thousands of gallons of water flow in. So what finally went over and welded that manhole shut.
Were they blowing covers on storm events? I mean,
They were lifting them off to dump the stormwater in.
so if this is potentially residential in any way, shape, or form, I think we would need to get a good idea if the sewer systems can even handle more residential.
Yeah, that's on our list.
Well, the storm sewer too, I mean, that whole section of 298 right across the other side is what goes underwater and they close the road. Like, what's the grade differential between there? Because there's not a lot of opportunity for impoundment. I would think that's fairly free flowing back and forth through there. Is it not, Doug?
That whole area during the FEMA remapping was remodeled for golf course and Fremont Meadows and Berry Village. You were part of it.
Yeah.
John Camp came in from CNS and he did a great job. But it was very circumspect. He was able to find a few idiosyncrasies that took them back out of floodplain mapping over there.
Okay.
But traditionally, there are Lomars for that whole area.
Fremont, all of Fremont.
What do we think about as a board? This is coming to us as a potential PUD for a recommendation. And then the idea is, let's make a recommendation and figure everything out later. I don't know if we like that idea as a board, and if is this even appropriate for a PUD in general? I'll ask that question.
I'll try and answer that. I think this is an example of exactly what we were afraid of when the town board decided to take off the 25-acre limit. And we were afraid we were gonna get, everybody was gonna come in and every project was gonna be a PUD. If you didn't have a PUD in front of you and you were gonna try and develop this, what would you do?
You wouldn't be able to have your comprehensive plan showing mixed-use developments and neighborhood type, or like higher density type projects without having this flexibility.
Okay, so there is a conflict. Desire to increase the density of housing and desire to maintain the beauty and the natural loveliness of this area.
Right.
And I propose that this is a perfect example of a head-on collision. I couldn't vote for this. I shudder at the thought. It's one of those things that keeps me awake nights when I think, what were they thinking 20 years ago when they let some of this stuff happen? I don't want them to come back 20 years from now and ask, what were they doing in 2024? Were they asleep? No. We're not rigid conservatives. We want to keep the town just the way it is. We're not trying to pickle it. We're trying to develop it in an intelligent fashion.
Sure.
I don't think this quite makes anything. I agree. It's just not, I only have one vote.
I couldn't agree with you more.
They're starting to have.
And I want to expand a little bit on what Aaron said and what you just said. Our job, it's the way I look at it. Our job is to do what we believe is in the best interest of our town. And sometimes we do end up with something like this and we're loggerheads and we have problems with it. But I'm not gonna do development for the sake of development. I wanna do what's right for the citizens, what's right for the town. And I have a real problem with this development, the way it stands right now.
And my job is to come to some kind of, reasonable, place to where you all are happy with, you're excited about this project, or develop it, make it happen. So with all the comments you guys have provided me so far, we're gonna go and make adjustments and see what we can propose and it's all in flux right now. This is the initial concept of what was thought about. We're looking for comments, and I know John Deere also reached out to some of the adjoining neighbors and they're waiting to hear back from them, and the fire department and the school, school board, making sure that nobody has any negative impact by the project. So we're trying to do our homework, but these comments are good.
I think they did like 0 lots or something. I don't know much about it after, but like looking at everything else that's around it, I see that the site is kind of in rough shape and it could stand to be improved, right? But when you look at the density and you look at it all around it, and then you've got this kind of empty corridor, which is probably left over from previous larger scale planning things and utility easements. It doesn't look right to have big modern buildings here, right? It doesn't feel right. But I don't think that means it can't be developed, because I think that concentrating development into areas like this that are already significantly developed is a far better use of our world and our community than taking virgin land and just popping in houses, right?
I agree with that.
So I think there's a huge opportunity here, whether it's through a PUD or whatever. Like, I don't want your client to get completely turned off, and the whole PUD thing, we have to be super careful. And I know that it has to be a financially viable project, but couldn't it be an extension of the subdivision above it? Like, what's preventing this from being a traditional extension of the neighborhood?
The zoning right now.
The
It's
zoning,
commercially zoned right now.
But
Yeah,
then why,
well, we
Is
could
it-
go from come in for a traditional zone change.
right? is that, I mean, I guess it's the owner wants to do what they wanna do with it, and this is a much more exciting project to propose, but it's not sitting right.
That subdivision was probably built in the 1950s.
Yeah.
Probably shortly after World War II.
Yeah.
There's small capes
Yeah.
and ranches, and I don't think that's what someone developed
But
today.
patio homes,
Yeah,
you threw that out there,
Yeah.
and
It's
if,
possible.
you know,
Yeah, it's something that golfers would wanna live in.
Right.
well, I'm not the
And have
target
access to the golf
story.
course.
There's people whose jobs are to help determine what sells in what area and why. And with the quick access to the highways, I think that with the whole like, dare I say, micron business, everybody wants in on a piece of that. And what do those people or empty nesters who are moving out of their homes nearby, like,
I think we looked at the overall comprehensive plan and we saw that this was defined as it was in the new comprehensive plan. So based on opportunity there, it'll be aligned with what the town
It's
division was.
defined as what?
It's future land use.
The new use map has the, I believe you called it neighborhood mixed use development.
Which is, yeah, but, and it's future land use, so it's more of concept.
Yeah, neighborhood mixed use / commercial. So they saw, oh, I'm sorry, of the title?
no, to
Where
the
it's
site.
to the
site?
site area.
So it's that red blob there to the right of the North Third Street.
Oh,
That red blob to the right of North Third.
Here, let me do that. It's this area,
Yeah, it's in that one.
and we're right here,
Yes,
and this is the rest of it
and that's the
down below.
wetland,
Yeah.
portion, correct.
Which
Which
is,
is wet.
I don't think it could not be mixed use residential, I mean, it probably won't be economically feasible, but if there was like some, some cafe, restaurant, whatever with some even two-story apartments where the second story has views of the golf course area and access and, or
The trouble,
and then the front part of the parcel against the road could be more mixed
So
commercial.
look at the office complex just to the south of this,
Mhm,
they're busy.
mhm.
They have a pediatrician's office, they have a whole bunch of stuff in there. And so when we think of mixed use, it's easy to have it automatically go to coffee shops and restaurants and stuff like that, but there's a lot of other things that people who could walk to or be here might wanna use. And it sounds like that's not an issue, they've got
Right,
that.
we want the flexibility, it could be a dental office, it could be a,
yeah, I just threw that out.
I'm just
Yeah.
tired of like myself.
Yeah, I just threw it out.
The difficulty with
It's just more,
two-story,
I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not trying to shoot the project down
Sure.
altogether, and I could see the mixed use.
Right.
Idea.
so the difficulty with two-story structures is you're going through the infrastructure upgrades and providing elevators and circulation to get people off of that second floor and provide accessibility to all of those units, that the cost of elevators compared to the actual construction of the building footprint, if you can get a third story in there to at least service a couple of units on those floors, that really helps with the offsetting the costs and the maintenance and everything of elevators. But
I
You
think
know,
it's a good idea, maybe just in a different, I know they own this property, but
Does mixed use have to mean that it's two uses in the same building, or can it have could it have homes in part of it and a doctor's office? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what we
Because
got.
that would solve
that
some
would,
of that.
with the PUD.
I think
language.
traditionally mixed use is kind of that lower levels commercial, upper levels
Yeah.
residential kind of density, more
But
like
I don't
town
really
center
think
type
that
feeling.
works here. Honestly, I guess that's what it's coming down to for me. This is a residential area, this is not close to anything else where you're gonna have, I get the comp plan, I get that, but
I think they might have forgotten
I
the,
think
I think they forgot the wetlands in that future land use map.
Yeah, well,
I think they forgot that, with that red area. We need to
Yeah.
relook at that, I think.
Yep.
But, so I think you have what you need, we're not able to make a recommendation.
Sure.
I already kind of alluded to that to the town supervisor, but,
Do we need to send
so,
something off to the town board to say, at this point, we can't?
make a recommendation.
I had mentioned to a town board member that we're getting it for the first time, and so unlikely we're gonna do anything this time.
Do we want to give them another chance to come back in?
Yeah.
Oh,
With
yeah.
some changes
Well, I'm
and
sure
stuff?
that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
And
Before we just
Appreciate
say, yeah.
We appreciate that. Yeah.
I think PUDs, especially under the circumstances that we're in this town, require a significant amount of time. It's never a one and done.
No.
And it feels
It shouldn't
awkward and
be.
painful because we're used to kind of working through these things faster, but this is gonna require some, I would say,
We're used to
a
working
couple
with zoning
months of
requirements.
back and forth and working it out. So
And
let your client know that
discussion. Discussion, debate.
I mean, the town board did mention they would have a work session with the planning board, so maybe they'll decide to do that before you officially come back to us.
Yeah, they talked about like a planning committee or something that kind of
Well,
takes a
I
couple of
think the last
members
time
to
we
be able
had
to,
a
and
joint-
even neighborhood residents and things like that, to be able to look at all and give opinions, but we
We had a
look forward
joint
to that.
public meeting with planning board and town board at the last, meeting. And I will say I think you should start from scratch. It's significantly different
Yeah.
than either of those other two in every possible way.
Yeah,
Which,
now's your
which project
chance.
is it?
Well, the one up
The
there,
Twin
the
Ponds.
Twin Ponds.
Oh, Twin Pond.
We
I mean,
did
that
like
could
a
not
a
be
joint
more
work
different.
session.
I would
than the
encourage
one-
you
The other one that we did.
I thought you meant like a third, there was another one
No,
after.
no, this is the third.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would encourage you to look at PUDs in other towns as well. And do a review of them if you find something similar to your project, because just because this is what's been approved twice in this town doesn't mean that it's the only way to do it or the best way to do it. I mean, you might come back with something that then becomes the precedent. How these things are done.
I think it also, just to throw, I think it's similar to how we've approached, I don't wanna bring up a bad topic, how we've approached solar, but, you know, as far as like, everyone is different, and some were so well screened and in certain areas, and then some were not. And so to take it right from the Twin Ponds PUD, it's a totally different, like I was saying, situation where it's off of the, well, first of all, it's not in a high residential area, but it's also set back from the road and you can't see it, and it's by those ponds, and that's an unusual
Lots of
feature,
open space.
so lots of open space.
Yeah, that's why we also took High Ridge into consideration, which I thought was a lot closer to this situation. You're surrounded by single family residential and you're right on the road, and so I thought it was a balance of the two, but again, I understand all the concerns, and we'll go back and we'll look at everything and adjust and
Okay.
present. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thanks, guys.
All right, thank
Appreciate it.
you. Thanks for coming
Yeah,
in.
no problem. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for your waiting to the end.
It's a part of the process.
It's hard to get up there.
Yeah. Okay, well, I do not have any other business.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.